Hey guys, tonight we step out of your apartment glow and into the hush of a Paleolithic camp where embers breathe like sleepy animals, where smoke climbs into a sky so clean you can hear it. The ground is cool under your soles, the night smells of wet stone and fat on the fire, and you're holding your breath because a small spoiler, you probably won't survive this if we drop you here without your phone, your fridge and your tetanus shot. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you are and what time it is right now. I love seeing our little campfire ring the planet. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crouch palms out to the warmth and notice how familiar all of this feels. The fire pops like your microwave, only slower and less judgmental. Faces gather glossy with light. Someone passes a roasted root, someone else laughs too loud, and you do that quick little half smile because the joke is halfway private and halfway universal. You fit here strangely. Your bedtime routine: last sip of water, last scroll, last quick check that the door is locked, maps neatly onto the last tend, the coals, last glance, beyond the grass line, last whisper to the person beside you. Your weighted blanket. It's just a mammoth hide with a modern rebrand. Mainstream fact to anchor. You, archaeologists, find rings of ancient hearths, hardened ash and charred bone. Evidence that people like you cooked and gathered and told stories hundreds of thousands of years ago. You can almost hear the hiss of marrow heating rendering into calories that make tomorrow's possible. This is not exotic, it's domestic. It's Tuesday night without the emails. A woman across the fire holds up a flake of flint and turns it so it catches the glow. You recognise the gesture instantly. It's the same way you tilt your phone to kill a glare. The move says tool check, light check, hands ready. Your thumbs twitch, because thumbs always do. The modern joke writes itself. Your Wi-Fi is basically the camp's smoke column news rising into the dark, slightly unreliable. But if you watch long enough, you catch the meaning. Someone begins to hum. It isn't a performance. It's a temperature control for nerves and group mood. The pitch is low, the rhythm steady, and your chest follows. Quirky tidbit time. There's decent evidence people rubbed red ochre on skin and gear. Part sunscreen, part bug repellent, part we belong together. Badge. So your campmates might gleam with iron dust like cosmic athletes. You notice smears on their wrists, on the little bone pendants on the baby's forehead. The colour says shelter the same way your team hoodie does on a rainy commute. You adjust your seat because sitting on the ground for more than 5 minutes is a sport. You think about sleep. Historians still argue whether pre-industrial nights fell into first sleep and second sleep, and whether foragers wandered naturally through that gentle valley, dozing, waking to stoke the fire, murmuring, then sinking again. Your brain, trained by notifications, already knows the rhythm. Light sleep. Micro-wake, the reassuring glow, the slide back down. Different lamp, same pattern. You scan the circle. Kin here, friends there, the charismatic cousin who always volunteers to check the dark perimeter, already inching toward the shadows. Your startle reflex, a perfectly respectable 200,000-year-old app, pings once, then quiets. The fire is a fence and a theatre at once. On some nights you would tell the story of today's walk of tracks you followed, of a tree full of bees that were only medium angry. On other nights you would inventory tools, name them, like family scraper all hammerstone, that one blade everyone borrows and nobody returns. You think about your kitchen drawer of chargers and smile. Every epoch has its communally shared gear. A fact to settle the scene deeper. Homo sapiens, your team, show up in the African record roughly 300,000 years ago, brains already carrying the wet electricity for art planning, gossip and awkward pauses. The awkward pauses are timeless. Someone coughs, the group shifts. You pass the roasted root back. The child beside you mimics your bite exactly because mimicry is kindergarten and graduate school for humans. There's a light joke in there. Your standing desk is just the savannah's panoramic lookout with worse scenery, but you swallow it and substitute a soft because we're winding down, not winding up. A fringe-leaning whisper threads the circle some cultures carried fire between camps, as a glowing coals tucked into punky wood or bark like precious breathing batteries. You picture a person walking through dawn with a curl of smoke in their hands, careful as if holding a sleeping animal. You've held your own version, a takeaway cup, a new idea, a secret, and felt that quiet urgency. Don't let this go out. You look up. The constellations are ferociously bright. You don't need a star app, you need a neck massage. Someone points and sketches a shape with a finger-knitting story into sky. The simple act of naming helps you remember where water lies, where the wind comes from when seasons turn. If you've ever taped sticky notes to a monitor, same urge, same engine, historians still argue whether those sky names carried strict ritual schedules or flexible local meanings, but your body understands either way. You plan tomorrow every night without meaning to. The hum returns this time with a ghost of rhythm like feet over dirt. You lean back and catch a whiff of something sweet, maybe crushed leaves in the fire, maybe fat. Your brain does the math. 1, safe heat. 2, familiar voices. 3, digestible food. 4, darkness kept at a courteous distance. The equation equals drowsy. And yet gentle sarcasm incoming. You reach automatically for your non-existent phone because you've trained yourself to end the day with a small rectangle of stone. Don't worry, there's a backup. Someone taps your shoulder and hands you a real stone, well-worn warm from the hand. It's heavier than a phone and has 100% fewer alarms. Across from you, 2 elders talk without rushing. One tells a story of a place where river stones ring when struck a canyon that sings. The other corrects one detail and the first nods happy to be improved. You grin. That's peer review. Also, it's bedtime ASMR low voices, soft consonants, breathy laughter when a detail lands. The story shuffles the same cards your brain always loves. Surprise status, danger, safely framed, a little lesson, a little swagger. One mainstream reality check rises with it. People like you ranged far traded, widely past shells and pigments and obsidian across surprising distances. Your couch isn't the only thing that networks. The baby fusses, then tucks back into a parent's shoulder. You yawn contagiously, of course, because bodies sync like playlists on the same account. Your eyes half close. Edges blur the fire's heart, the oval of faces, the scratch of grass. You realise that when you set your alarm and fuss with your comforter, you're acting out motions rediscovered every night for 10,000 nights. The continuity is weirdly comforting. It's also a small dare if you're this similar to your ancient neighbours, as maybe tomorrow's choices can be simpler than you fear. Eat with people carry kindness, like a coal, leave a place better than you found it and keep the fire going. You slide towards sleep as someone adds a log. Sparks float up short-lived stars. Your breath follows the rise and settle, like waves that learn to be trees, that learn to be heat. The camp settles into the same architecture as your bedroom warm core, quiet perimeter you, in the soft penumbra, where the world gets gentle. The last thing you hear is a soft joke, "Who stole my scraper again?" and a chorus of innocent shrugs. Timeless. Dawn leaks into camp like water through woven grass, and you wake without a ringtone. The light is gentle and bossy at the same time, and your body being very old in the ways that matter reads it like a push notification from the sun. Stretch now. You do joints clicking a little like dry seeds in a gourd rattle. The coals from the last night still glow. Someone nudges them with a stick and the fire answers with a soft woof that feels like coffee for the eyes. Your first thought is not inbox, it's water. And you shuffle toward it with that universal morning face that says diplomatically, "Please do not invent any surprises for at least 10 minutes. You rinse your mouth with cold leaf-scented water, and your hands cup it perfectly, as if hands were designed for it, which in the unofficial product roadmap of human anatomy they pretty much were. You rub your teeth with a frayed twig because you're classy like that. Mainstream fact archaeologists find toothpick grooves on ancient teeth, and even birch bark tar chewing gum dotted with tooth marks hints that people cleaned, chewed and soothed mouths long before peppermint was a flavour. It's weirdly satisfying, and your jaw wakes up in little concentric circles of comfort. Around you, the camp's morning choreography starts up. Someone feeds the fire. Someone shakes out a hide. Someone laughs at a dream and pretends it meant nothing. You do the big cat stretch, hips back, chest forward, which if we're honest is yoga with a more honest name. A teen ambles past hair, convincing you that bedhead is a Paleolithic heritage item. Gentle sarcasm moment, the only difference between your modern morning routine video and this is that no one here says, "Hey guys, welcome back to my channel," and the moisturiser is elk fat. 5 stars for glow, 1 star for scent. Breakfast is not a calendar item so much as a small mission. You crush roasted nuts, stir in a handful of berries, scrape last night's fat into a hot stone bowl, and the smell sells itself. A child appears with a grin and 0 contribution. The ancient rule of breakfast freeloading stands. Historians still argue whether food sharing in its earliest camps followed strict rules Or a vibe-based generosity, but your experience says if you cook it, they will materialise with bowls. You ladle anyway, because that's how insurance works out here today. You share tomorrow, someone shares back when your hunt returns light. Now comes the part you recognise from office life, the stand-up. Not the comedy, though. There's always someone trying a material, but the quick practical check-in that sets the day. You gather by the fire's edge, rubbing sleep from your eyes, and talk through routes, roles, and contingencies. You point at the ridge with thorn trees good for honey but bring smoke. You nod at the shallow creek where fish once coughed themselves into the net as if volunteering. The group decides who scouts, who gathers tubers, who stays to repair a hide, and watch small children who, given a 5-minute head start, can dismantle a camp with the pure curiosity of cheerful apes. Mainstream fact to anchor the scene across many forager societies observed in recent centuries Hadza-san Agtei. People tend to wake around sunrise, spend early hours in light social talk and task prep, and head out in small flexible parties rather than huge bossed-around squads. Leadership is soft influence, is reputational, and the best manager is the person people trust to be useful without being annoying. You know that person. You also know the other one. Water skins get checked. The cordage gets a quick love test pull listen nod. The day's tools appear in a tidy little still life. Digging sticks polished by palms bags woven from plant fibres, a bone awl that has survived more seasons than your last 3 phones combined. You thumb your own edge, a flake you napped yesterday, and feel both proud and slightly anxious, a universal tool owner vibe. You tuck it into a wrap on your hip, because pockets tragically have not been invented, and suddenly you understand the fashion politics of belts. Someone smears a bit of ochre on your cheek. It's part mosquito strategy, part identity marker, part we're doing this together. It's also a callback to last night's glamour routine, making you look like the world's sleepiest athlete. Quirky tidbit. Some groups in hot climates have been known to greet the day with quick smoke baths standing near smouldering herbs to chase insects and carry a faint, pleasant scent. You try it waving smoke up your arms and feel like a high priest of not getting bitten. You glance at the sky and make a tiny weather forecast, which is to say you sniff the wind and squint. Your forecast model has 0 satellites and a very good track record. The plan shifts a little. The berry patch gets first pass, the distant spring gets postponed, because clouds to the west feel snippy. Historians still argue whether our ancestors maintained formal, repeated morning rituals, or kept planning informal and opportunistic. What you see is an organised casualness, a habit of readiness that looks a lot like your best days calendar light goals. Clear shoes by the door. Hydration check. You sip, you burp, you accept that dignity is optional before noon. Your gut now invested thanks you. You shoulder a bag and feel its weight, pleasant at first, meaningful later. The camp's perimeter whispers with small sounds, a kid inventing a songwood creaking, someone telling the same joke about someone else's snoring for the 5,000th morning. Joke one of the day, snoring is the original thunder, and yes, everyone claims it's someone else. You pause to wash your face more thoroughly at the stream. The water is cold enough to rewire your mood in 3 seconds. You splash, gasp, and laugh because you can't help it. It's free therapy. You smooth your eyebrows, which will rebel anyway, and swipe a smear of ash along your teeth. Not delicious, somewhat effective. Your reflection in the water is warped kind and older than your bathroom mirror would admit. You wink at it because flirting with your reflection is a tradition going back at least to the invention of water. Someone claps twice casual signal and the heading out group forms without ceremony. You fall in with 2 elders and a friend who knows bird calls like gossip. The path out of camp is the same one in, but mornings always make it feel new. Dew brushes your ankles, a spider web skims your forearm like kindness. You catalogue the clucks and churs around you and mentally tag alarm versus nothing burger, a skill you use daily with human emails. Joke 2 birds invented reply all long before we did, and they use it even more recklessly. Before you step fully beyond the familiar, you look back. The ones staying behind have their own morning list mending, firewood minding toddlers with the patience of saints and the reflexes of cats. The division of labour looks flexible because it is. Historians still argue whether gendered roles were as sharply drawn as old textbooks say, or if women hunted more than assumed, and men gathered without drama. What you see is competence moving to where it's needed most, like water finding a path. You make a note when in doubt, go where your hands helped. A thin smoke ribbon marks the camp home beacon smell of safety. The road in your head compares it to your apartment hallway, scent laundry and mystery dinners. Your feet pick a rhythm that will last hours if it must, the human superpower not sprinting magnificently, just keeping on. You hum because humming is breath with opinions. The elders trade path wisdom, avoid the patch where thorns hook like lawyers, watch for bees at the hollow log, remember the hidden spring under the rock shaped like a sleeping pig. Mainstream light aside, many foragers carry mental maps of enormous complexity, stacking landmarks, seasonal changes and social boundaries into a brain GPS that updates automatically, no subscription required. You nibble a berry path summer long and tuck a few leaves in your pouch, as if to say to future you, snack insurance. The path widens where animals have said it's okay. You step in old hoofprints news that never expires. A quail explodes from a bush and your soul leaves your body for half a second before returning with an embarrassed cough. Joke 3. You apologise to the quail because being polite to jump scares is also a human tradition. As the sun clears the trees, warmth leans on your shoulders. You feel awake in the clean way, the way that doesn't require a second cup. You realize the bones of your morning at home stretch rinse snack plan are these same bones. You didn't invent routine, you inherited it. That's the quiet miracle you're not performing a quaint reenactment. You're continuing a service long in operation with slight upgrades and some truly questionable scented candles. One more quirky note to pocket someone at the back of your little group carries a bundle of green twigs to bruise and tie into a quick brush if flies get mean, or if you need to flick ash from a cooking stone later. The multi-tool was always a bouquet. You smile. This is the kind of morning where usefulness feels gentle, where your list is just a path and your path is just a list you can walk. You breathe deep. The day is waiting, but not with teeth, more with open hands. And you very old and very new step into it with the easy seriousness of those who have done this before, and will do it again tomorrow, because that is what mornings are for choosing forward. By mid-morning, your brain starts making tiny food PowerPoints, a glossy berry, a strip of something smoky, the comfort geometry of a hot bowl. The air answers with a whisper from Camphor, waking on stone sap, popping in the fire, and your mouth does that automatic, hey, I know this place thing. What your app labels, cravings, your body reads as an old memo, sweet means ripe, fat means safe calories, salt means water kept. When a slice of root hits heat and browns the surface, perfumes the clearing with the Maillard magic you already love in toast and fries. Ancient you leans in because browning is the universe's way of saying, this won't be depressing. Joke 1 char is just artisanal burnt, and yes, you will pretend you did it on purpose. Mainstream fact to set the coals, controlled fire and cooking go back hundreds of thousands of years in your lineage. Hearths, ash lenses and heat-altered stones tell a long, warm story. People like you gathered at these reliable cores to render marrow, soften tough roots, and turn iffy into edible. Fire doesn't just heat, it edits. Toxins weaken fibres, loosen starches, gelatinize. A tuber that fights your jaw when raw yields with gratitude when roasted under embers. The smoke adding a soft punctuation mark your brain translates as home. You pass that roasted slice to a neighbour, because taste is better when someone says, within earshot, a rule that predates restaurants and Instagram by a lot. You set out with a digging stick to find more of the good stuff. Patches of disturbed soil and the telltale leaves say root pantry. You work the stick under a wild tuber and pry. The thing comes up like a fossilised shoe muddy knobby, not winning any beauty contests, but you remember the trick the elders drilled into you, slice thin roast long, eat slowly. Mainstream fact in your back pocket, starch grains from wild roots and grasses have been identified on ancient grinding stones and even in dental calculus. People have been starch savvy for ages. You drop the slices on a hot flat rock and let them turn golden. The smell is oddly sweet, like someone whispered honey near a campfire, and it stuck. Speaking of honey, your companion with the bird gossip ears tilts their chin. There's a chatter above you that means business. You follow to a tree that hums like it swallowed a drum. Bees. Nobody is heroic. Everybody is smart. You gather punky wood cokes, a cool smoke, and the hive's mood slides from absolutely not to okay, hurry up. Quirky but true tidbit in parts of Africa, the greater honey guys. Guide. Bird leads people to hives on purpose, trading directions for leftover wax and larvae. It's a cross-species collab with benefits. You're not sure the birds here got the memo, but the vibe feels familiar. You bring smoke, you climb a little, you share a sweet win. Joke 2, you promise the bees you'll tag them in the post. They don't sign the release. Back at the fire, the real music begins sizzle. You slice a strip of yesterday's lean meat thin to go far and lay it beside the tubers. A little rendered fat from a previous boil slicks the rock and turns the sound up to podcast I actually like. Mainstream fact archaeologists routinely find long bones cracked lengthwise with percussion. Marks, a calling card of marrow hunting and evidence of bone grease rendering, where fragments simmered to pull every last calorie. Your version is friendlier, a shallow stone bowl, a splash of water, hot rocks, cycled in with tongs made from forked sticks. Stone boiling is prehistoric sous vide, only louder. You watch steam carry a savoury fog across the circle and feel your shoulders drop. Hunger is not just about fuel, it's about signals saying you are included. Cooking technology multiplies in the mind once you start looking. You help dig a shallow pit, line it with stone, build a small fire, then tuck wrapped roots in the coals and cover the whole thing with soil, a travelling earth oven that will burp up lunch hours later. If you had clay handy and luck with firing, you might set a simple pot by the edge of the flames. Some of the world's oldest pottery shows scorch marks that read like recipes, lacking that you learn the old hack boil in a hide or bark container by dropping in glowing stones, listening for that happy simmer. Joke 3. Yes, a few rocks explode on their own. Yes, everyone pretends to be very brave about it. The point isn't gourmet, it's dependable. The social ritual is less recipe, more choreography. Someone salts the meat lightly with ash from a salt bush, which sounds like a wizard trick and is mostly practical chemistry. Someone else hands the choicest sweet slice to a child, because that's how retention policies work. You feed the future remembers. You carve small constant bites for the elders, a rhythm you'll want returned someday. Historians still argue whether the invention of routine nightly cooking helped reorganize social life. Changing pair bonds evening, cooperation, even division of labour, or whether those patterns were already there and fire just spotlighted them. What you can see is simple. The hearth pulls people in like gravity and then arranges them by attention and care. You taste. The tuber's edges are crisp, the centre sighs. A streak of fat paints your lower lip and you swipe it with that instinctive gesture your species never stops doing. Your tongue does the math, it loves sugar plus fat equals you will not collapse on the trail at 3 p.m. The salt, scarce but thrilling, nudges the craving centre like an inside joke. Mainstream reminder your taste preferences are conserved hardware, sweet and fat mean energy. Bitter often warns danger. Sour suggests fermentation or freshness, depending on context. You aren't weak for wanting fries, you're ancient for it. The trick is choosing the version that doesn't make your afternoon feel like you swallowed a nap. A small ceremony unfolds without anyone announcing it. Before the group eats, someone flicks a pinch of crumbs into the fire, with a soft word for those who aren't here, lost kin friendly, camps far off, even animals taken. It's not theatrical, it's a bookkeeping entry in spirit. Your chest goes warm the way it does when you text a friend a photo of your first pancake and they reply with fire emojis. Different icons, same thread. Food is how you say we're still us. You feel the ochre you smeared on at dawn tightening slightly as it dries. You rub at it and leave a finger streak on your cheek like a warrior of brunch. The jokes drift like seasoning. Someone claims their digging stick is cursed because it finds rocks, never tubers. Someone else says the hive's honey tasted faintly of flowers with opinions. Laughter lifts and falls with the steam, and under the jokes runs a more serious logic feast and lean. On a great day you eat until your belly declares a sovereign state. On a thin day you sip the memory of fat and make it to morning. Modern, you recognises the rhythm in different clothes. The big Sunday cook that carries you through Wednesday, the week where salad is an apology and the week where soup is a friend. Historians still argue whether early groups micromanaged portions with strict rules or let norms and reputation do the work. Your camp seems to use both with a generous margin of don't be that person. Afternoon drifts past in prep slicing thin strips to dry, stringing them near the fire's gentler heat, tucking berries into woven trays to keep them honest. You learn to test doneness by smell, by bend, by how the surface takes light. The skills feel artistic because they are. Taste is a craft, not an accident. You archive calories into portable, stackable formats and somewhere deep down you relax. That feeling when your snack drawer is mysteriously full, same software, different interface. As the sun leans low, dinner returns from its slow pit nap. The smell is ridiculous in the best way. You lift the soil cap, steam unfurls, the whole circle inhales as one organism with many noses. You plate the roots, plate is aspirational. It's a bark square and drizzle a touch of melted fat like you've been watching cooking shows for 40,000 years. You have. The final truth lands gently as you eat your love of crispy edges, your weakness for sweetness, your preference for just a little salt, your urge to feed a friend first. None of it is a glitch of modernity, it's continuity. Your fryer is a fire in a box, your grill is a tamed ember, your dining table is a hearth that forgot to smoke. You lean back greasy and pleased and watch sparks drift up into the violet air. Tomorrow you'll walk again, dig again, rend a roast, and tell someone taste this with the same hopeful smile. You're not reenacting a past life, you're living the current version of an old truth, the camp that eats together, stays together, and tells better stories after. You wipe a little grease from your fingers and reach for a flake, not the crispy tuber kind, the sharp stone kind, and your thumbs immediately do their ancestral dance. Pinch, rotate, check the bite, the way you tilt your phone to look for hairline cracks. Same posture, same intent. Extend the hand, solve the problem, make the next few hours easier. Tool and thumb have been in a long conversation. You are the latest reply in the thread. You crouch by a patch of nappable stone, the kind that breaks like glass, and pick a hammerstone the size of a mango. Tap, tap. A bright tick climbs your bones as a flake parts cleanly. Mainstream fact stone tools go back at least 2.6 million years in the Oldowan tradition, and later Apulian hand axes spread across Africa and Eurasia for more than 1 million years, teardrop silhouettes so consistent they feel branded by time. You turn the flake to the light and nod. A teen squats beside you, studying the angle of your wrist. You narrate in low, lazy ASMR platform here. Angle there, follow through like you're buttering toast you respect. Another flake skitters into the dust. The teen pounces and grins loot acquired. Historians still argue whether early humans learned mainly by quiet imitation, by explicit step-by-step teaching, or by patient apprenticeship full of eyebrows and sound effects. What you see as simple hands demonstrate, other hands copy, and a group remembers. You switch from hammerstone to antler, tip pressure flaking tiny whispering curls that sharpen the line. You're chasing that scary sharp glint that makes everyone suddenly respectful of gravity. Quirky tidbit archaeologists can sometimes tell right or left-handed nappers from the direction of scars and the sequence of removals. Your chips are quietly telling future strangers which hand you favour. You wave to them across the centuries just in case. Time to haft. The word sounds modern. The act is old. You split a green stick, cradle the stone in its mouth, and bind it with cord you twisted from plant fibres while gossiping last night. A dab of glue seals the marriage. Another mainstream aside with a smoky scent people made pitch by heating birch bark in low oxygen and lumps of birch tar, with tooth marks turn up at sites where someone chewed the glue soft before using it industrial chewing gum with opinions. You warm a pea of resin by the coals and press it into the seam. Your kit unfurls like a prehistoric EDC flake blade scraper awl from a sliver of bone, a needle that persuades hide to become a bag, a hammerstone that doubles as a percussion therapist. You tuck them into a wrap. Joke one you call it your pocket, then remember, pockets aren't invented yet and feel personally betrayed by fashion history. Fine belt for the win. You test the new edge on a reed. It parts like a polite curtain. That warm, smug usefulness arrives the afterglow of a tool snapping perfectly into its job. An elder nods once the nod meaning, congrats, you have temporarily defeated entropy. The teen imitates your grip. You re-angle their wrist nudging habit into skill. Cultural transmission doesn't look like a graduation ceremony. It looks like tiny corrections between people who would prefer not to bleed today. At the hide pegged on the ground, your scraper sings. Short strokes rhythm steady as if planing a whisper off the surface. Fat you lift goes into tonight's boil. The hide will remember you as a bag of wrap, maybe a drum if someone is feeling poetic. You stitch a small tear with sinew and a bone needle. The seam pulls together like a sigh, precise but not fussy, the sort of choreography a body repeats until it becomes a lullaby. When your hands want novelty, you try a throwing stick at a leaning log. It carves the air with a satisfying thwack. Farther along, someone hefts an atlatl, a spear thrower that lengthens your arm like a spring. The dart flexes and releases with the grace of a diving bird. Mainstream fact before bows became common in many regions. People worldwide use spear throwers to reach farther and hit harder. The physics is simple, the effect elegant. Joke 2, you murmur upgrade available and smile. A friend returns from the ridge with a dark glassy pebble, the diver of stones. Even a lazy strike on obsidian produces a razor of scandalous thinness. You wrap the edge in bark while carrying it. Mainstream note under scary neat obsidian blades can reach edge sharpness finer than steel under a microscope. Some modern surgeons have even tried obsidian scalpels for delicate cuts. Nobody here is doing elective surgery, but everyone enjoys the idea that rocks can be bossier than metal. Afternoon instruction melts into story. The elder traces little crescent scars on their thumb from a season of careless napping, recounts a spear point that failed because the glue was rushed, then shares the saving hack mix adhesive with a pinch of fine ochre to make it stronger and less brittle. That throws you back to last night's face paint, same mineral, different department. The teen leans closer the way you lean when someone drops a keyboard shortcut that will save you 10 tiny headaches a day. You push into finesse. A bone awl opens a tidy hole, a needle follows with thread. The seam takes a set, the hide agrees with geometry. The teen asks if every tool has a name. You shrug, some do the good blade grandmother's scraper because names make memory stick and responsibility land. Joke 3, you consider christening your hammerstone Sir Thumps a lot, and decide to wait until it earns a promotion. Toward evening, the kit gets tidied because the night steals untended things with fox-like grace. Each piece returns to its pocket that is not a pocket. You realise your tidy streak isn't modern minimalism. It's survival's housekeeping, lose less, fix faster, teach easier. You hold the new flake up to the light and catch that clean spark along the edge, the same tiny dopamine ping you get when your phone finishes updating without breaking anything. Different century, same mammal. Before you rise, you hand the teen your scraper and say your turn. 2 clumsy passes, then a third that sings. Their face does that private storm clear all students wear when emotion clicks. Knowledge ratchets 1 notch tighter. Somewhere a bird tries a new call, someone hums the camp's low tune, and your thumbs rest like tired actors after a good scene already plotting tomorrow's performance. The fire settles into a low purr and the circle leans in. You feel your throat warm the way your hands warmed tools, loosening, testing, ready to work. Language is the body's night shift and the camp is clocking in. Voices begin at a whisper, then rise to that easy band where everyone hears without trying. Tonight the camp downloads who traded shell beads at the river, who spotted fresh tracks near the reeds, and who is absolutely not hoarding the good blade cue. 3 very innocent coughs. Joke 1, you glance at your belt anyway, because if the scraper thief is you, again you'd like to discover that before the punchline does. Breath turns into thread and you stitch it into sound. Consonants click like pebbles tapped together. Vowels pour like water from a gourd. Your mouth is a tool roll, lips for gentle seals, tongue for quick pivots, teeth for crisp cuts, and you taste the shapes as they leave. Mainstream anchor. Long before anyone carved letters or sent texts, people left symbols engraved ochre, blocks, pierced shells painted hands on stone evidence that they shared meanings and taught each other how to keep those meanings alive. Those marks aren't decoration alone, they are memory scaffolds, the same impulse that has you labelling jars and saving voice notes. Gossip lights first because it's the camp's weather report for people. Someone starts, I heard, and the ring tilts in by a hair. The content is small, who promised to mend a net and didn't, whose snore sounded like an irritated ostrich who gave the choicest slice to a visiting auntie, but the function is enormous. Gossip is the neighbourhood watch with snacks. It rewards generosity, throttles bragging, and updates everyone's internal spreadsheet so cooperation feels fair. Quirky tidbit to pocket some foragers famously and salt the meat teasing a successful hunter until their pride shrinks to a portable size. It's stand-up comedy as social safety device. The joke lands, the meat gets shared, and tomorrow nobody's neck is on the line for disagreeing with a swaggering superstar. Warnings weave through the laughter like sinew through hide. A quiet voice mentions fresh cat scat on the South Trail. Another describes a leaf that makes tongues go numb. Messages where the memory-friendly clothes short rhythmic, a little dramatic, because the brain saves what it can hum. You repeat the plant name under your breath like a password. Historians still argue whether language first flowered from hand gestures that went vocal, or from calls that thickened into syntax. They also still argue whether cousins like the Neanderthals carried speech comparable to ours. Yet tonight's fact is simpler information wants a mouth, mouths want a circle. From the dark, a friend answers a joke with a bird-perfect trill you whistle back, partly to show off, partly to measure reach. Quirky but true, some communities craft whistled speech to fling meaning across ravines or through forest noise. Vowels ride melody, consonants, hop in pitch, and whole sentences skim the night without raising actual voices. You try a silly bring snacks up the hill and get a crisp already did, which might be the most human sentence ever composed. Joke 2, you briefly consider launching a startup for long-distance snack logistics, then remember you already work for One Humans Incorporated. As laughter settles, the elder draws out a story like a blade from a rap. Not a myth with a cape, but a tidy narrative in work boots the wind that shifts before rain and makes your nose taste metal. The cliff that eats careless feet. The day honey turned the whole camp gold. Story is a Swiss Army tool field manual folded into feeling. Mainstream fact night storytelling around hearths is widely observed among small-scale societies. Children pick up place names, animal habits, danger signs, and the key groups what good people do here by ear, long before they can list the steps like a lecture. The tale slides from once near the bend to tomorrow avoid the bend without ever sounding like homework. Firelight begins collaborating. The wall behind the teller ripples. Animals painted years ago seem to move legs multiplying and collapsing. Proto-animation courtesy of bulging rock and flicker. Mainstream paint note by choosing uneven stone and letting the flame stutter over it. People created motion illusions. Overlapping bodies and hand stencils beat with a rhythm that must have felt alive when eyes were fresh and nights were long. The elder traces a bison spine with a coal-blackened finger. And for a moment the circle becomes a theatre with no exit signs, only stars. Joke 3 whispered, so the magic stays intact. 5-star review, amazing special effects, would watch again. Between stories, gossip returns like the tide, softer now, more affectionate. Someone reenacts the concentrating face the teen made earlier when your new edge finally sang. The teen grins into the dark and pretends to be mortally offended. Gossip binds the timeline, today's stumbles become tomorrow's law. And tomorrow's smooth competence will be narrated back to you with the same generosity. Historians still argue whether gossip scaled human group size by replacing grooming as one famous hypothesis suggests, or whether it mostly tunes cooperation inside the small groups we actually live in. Either way, you can feel the mechanism clicking jokes that deflate egos, praise that travels faster than resentment, warnings that carry without sirens. Language also does honest labour for status without burning the village down. A pointed wisecrack redirects the hog of attention toward the task. A double-poured praise makes a shy person stand taller. Even conflict gets rehearsed safely. A mock argument runs through its beats without drawing blood, teaching the whole camp where the edges are before anyone trips. Your people don't keep a written code, they keep a nightly syllabus. The wrong kind of bragging gets you warm, gentle roasting. The right kind of sharing gets your name braided into a work song someone will hum while stitching a tear you made yesterday. A feather-like question lands. Why do we name the stars? The circle lets it rest before answering. One answer is practical names, are calendar pegs, navigation beacons, appointment reminders. You can see from anywhere. Another answer is tender naming lets you keep promises. If you say you will go when the hunter rises, you don't need a clock to be faithful. Mainstream note many peoples, time hunts, harvests and ceremonies by star cycles. Your bones nod along even if your phone would be off by a minute out here. The elder adds a line like a knot you can tie in the dark. Words keep the path from wandering. The ring thins towards sleep. Rumours fade into logistics, who's pairing for the spring run, who will teach the small one to weave, whose laugh the owls approve of tonight. A child leans into your shoulder, listening like a sponge with opinions. You remember being that shape half in the story, half in the wool of dreams, greedy for both. The fire slows to long even breaths. You whistle goodnight and get 2 or 3 back off key and perfect. You stretch on your hide eyes full of darting animals and winking coal, and your last drowsy observation is not profound, which is how you know. It's true the group chat is older than shoes. Tomorrow will bring a fresh note, a new warning, and one clean line everyone remembers. Breath finds the story's rhythm. The story keeps watch while you drift. By the time the stars finish their slow blink and the fire's breath turns to a whisper, you've learnt the camp's quiet map, the one drawn not on bark but in bonds. You sleep with your back to a cousin and a foot under a friend's calf because warmth is family, and family is any set of people who let your toes trespass at 3 a.m. The small one rolls, flops an arm across your face and reclaims it with a sigh. There's no snooze button on babies. There is only community. You share the night the way you share tools lightly, constantly, like it was your idea all along. Morning makes the social architecture easier to see. The circle rearranges into working triangles. Auntie with the best knot hands pairs with the teen who watched your scraping yesterday. The steady uncle who can read wind like fine print matches with a friend whose knees complain but whose eyes catch everything. You tuck in with 2 you've crossed rivers with before. Leadership shows up not with speeches but with competence you can relax around. The one who says, "Let me check the current," ends up in front because everyone's shoulders drop when they talk. That's a promotion Paleolithic style, you get the job you're already doing. Mainstream fact to give the scene bones, ethnographers and archaeologists alike describe hunter-gatherer bands as small and fluid. Often a few dozen people fishing and fusing with neighbouring groups across seasons. Children grow in the lap of many hands. Allaparents, grandmothers, uncles, older siblings, non-kin friends who act kin share the work of raising. You witness it every hour. A neighbour takes the toddler while you fetch water, and nobody invents a ceremony to authorise it. That ease is infrastructure. It's also insurance. Status the quiet kind, some make hums under everything. The one who jokes well can diffuse a tangle in 10 syllables. The one who tells a path story so vividly that the teen can walk it eyes closed earns the camp's best seat by osmosis. Your own little ledger updates while you help. You still remember the exact look the elder gave when your knife edge finally sang, and you move through today a hair taller because of it. Reputation here isn't a crown, it's a glow that makes cooperation easier to pick out of the dark. At lunch, the last berry becomes a public ethics exam with sticky fingers. Someone holds it up, squints like a magistrate, and the circle does its gentle calculus: who missed breakfast, who carried more weight, who's nursing, who just handed over the good blade without being asked. Okay, that last one might be you trying to repair yesterday's accidentally hoarding incident. Joke 1, you pretend to check a non-existent rulebook, which is just a smooth pebble you flip like it's printed with policy. The berry goes to the teen who walked an extra loop for dry wood without being told, and the nods that follow are the signatures. No scrolls required. You keep noticing the alliances that thread through everything. Two friends who were children together move like a single tool with two handles. A pair who have traded jokes for years can say left and make it land like "trust me." Those best friend bonds run parallel to kin ties, sometimes crossing them, sometimes stitching camps together across long distances. Quirky tidbit among some desert foragers. People forge name relationships if you share a name with someone's beloved relative. You become kin by label, gaining joking rights or obligations and a light scaffold of mutual aid. It's the original username overlap, only with real soup. By the fire, the levelling mechanisms stay on duty. When someone returns with a heavy haunch, the teasing ignites on cue. Must be a baby animal. It walked to camp to meet you, and careful your back will grow a brag. The hunter grins and shrugs the pride off like a burr. You remember last night's insult, the meat, and watch it do its work again. Status ascends just enough to make good examples contagious, then drifts back down so no one's shadow swallows the circle. Historians still argue whether Ice Age groups were truly egalitarian or whether hierarchy kept trying to sprout and was gardened short by custom and comedy. Either way, the toolbox here includes roast jokes, side-eye, and gently redistributed glory. When decisions get real storm coming river high, the camp holds a low unrushed parliament. Everyone speaks who has something the group needs: the elder, who reads clouds, the friend who learnt the hard way about hidden holes, the youth who was just at the ford yesterday. The person with the best map in their mouth does the steering. That rotates because skills do. If you squint, you see your office's best meeting on its cleanest day agenda by necessity, time box by weather action, items by proximity. Joke 2, you briefly wish you had a whiteboard, then realise the sky is doing an excellent impression. Family here is elastic. Pair bonds exist, you see them in the way some two bodies orbit food and sleep, but they don't swallow the village. Kids wander between laps like bee companions between flowers with opinions. The long-lived grandmother ferries stories and snacks with the same solemnity. The young men brag and deflate and learn to turn muscle into service. Mainstream but still magical notion, the grandmother hypothesis proposes that postmenopausal life gave our species a survival edge, with grandmothers boosting grandchildren's odds by sharing food and knowledge. Historians still argue whether that's the main driver of our long lifespan, but you can feel the local truth. The camp's edges hold better when elders stand there. Not all status is soft. A rare flare-up two cousins want the same fine flake threatens to tilt the entire afternoon towards sulk. The counsellor emerges, not a judge, not a chief, just the person everyone knows can pour oil on rough water. They retell the dispute as a comedy, slipping the good blade into the story like a character who learns humility and returns transformed. Laughter unknots faces. The flake goes into common stock for now, and for now stretches long enough for bruised pride to forget it had elbows. You file it away under conflict patterns that scale because you've seen threads like this pull your meetings back from edges too. On the trail rank shows itself in who walks where. The sharp-eyed friend slides to the front. The wise-eared elder trails to listen for the forest's reply all. The sturdy one takes middle, ferrying the toddler when legs get dramatic. You slot in so that you can spot snake sign and pass it back before it becomes a surprise. A tiny choreography of competence, people drift to their best positions the way geese draft in a V, trading front when tired and back when strong. Nobody announces rotations, bodies know before tongues. Even gifts carry status quietly across seasons. You pass a little necklace of drilled seeds to a woman from the next camp over a loop for a future favour, not a bill. She blush laughs and tucks it where it catches the fire. That's not commerce, that's Sarrowish thinking, long slow exchange that spreads risk and makes distant friendships ready to wake when rains fail. We'll get to full-on trade later. For now you notice that generosity has a very good memory. Joke 3. You tell your friend you're diversifying your portfolio, which here means more people who will share their last tuber with you because you once carried their sleepy kid. Meanwhile, subtle titles accumulate without bureaucracy. The one who can lift a hide alone becomes in jokes the rhinoceros. The one who fixes snares with a glance is the one with good hands. The uncle who tells the same 3 stories gets promoted nightly to Minister of Morale. These aren't empty. They cue who to follow when the job matches the name. Later, when rain needles the camp and spirits dip, you watch the minister at work and realise every organisation you've loved had one, even if they were paid in berries instead of badges. A quirky gear note under status in some places, arrows carry ownership marks, and the credit for a large animal goes to the owner of the arrow that first struck, not necessarily the shooter. Meat distribution follows that logic. You picture tiny signatures on Shaft's identity by notch. It's a ledger carved in wood rains on ego, and a way to turn individual luck into community meals without fistfights. You add a private notch to your own mental shaft. Admired skills matter, but admired fairness matters more. By dusk, you've memorised the camp's moving parts the way you'd learn the hotkeys for a new programme. Auntie's quiet shrug, that means I'll do it. The teen's flare of pride that needs a path to run on. The elder's side smile that authorises a joke. You place yourself where you can amplify what's already working. When the last berry test returns today, it's actually a sliver of roasted marrow, save for an elder. With a sore mouth. The circle repeats its answering math, and you feel how the smallest choices tune the biggest instrument who we are tomorrow. You settle by the fire ochre still faint on your cheek from the morning's mosquito diplomacy, and your ears fill with familiar night physics. Hum, crackle breath. The group tilts into that low gear where love hides 2 people share a hide without fuss. Someone braids a child's hair as if the day were not a storm of tiny logistics. You tuck your foot under your friend's calf again, and realise you're not simulating a Paleolithic family. You're practising the modern one, which is to say the only one people who notice you're cold and adjust the blanket, whether it's a branded, weighted comforter or a mammoth hide with a good story. You wake to giggles shaped like birds. The camp's smallest scientists are already running field trials in physics, botany and chaos. A toddler tests gravity with a gourd drop, thud, squeal, repeat, while 2 older kids race leaf boats down a trickle you generously call a river because branding matters. You hover not to stop the mess, but to admire it. Play is the lab your species carries everywhere. The equipment is familiar, curiosity, repetition, friendly Rafulirian snacks. Joke 1, the toddler is now a certified mud engineer, tenure pending at the University of Puddle. 4 children invent a game called Find the Sign. They've watched the elders read ground-like gossip so they rehearse. A teen hides a tuft of fur and scuffs the soil. The rest fan out with exaggerated seriousness, noses nearly to the dirt. You join because your inner raccoon can't resist a mystery. Knees damp, you trace a toe drag, a broken seed head, a faint polish where something brushed grass. The smallest triumphantly lifts the fur and declares a rule finder, tells the story path speed and what the animal was thinking when it sneezed. Theatre meets tracking. Everyone nods as if the verdict were peer-reviewed. Mainstream fact, under the laughter in many small-scale societies, children spend long hours in mixed-age play with light supervision, and much of that play is imitation mini-digging, pretend hunting practice, weaving mock negotiations that sound suspiciously like last night's insult. The meat. Roles aren't lectured. They're rehearsed. Your ears catch it now. 2 kids crouch at a fireless hearth assigning tasks in a tone any manager would recognise. Only. Their Gantt chart is 4 pebbles and a stick. The Minister of Morale from your campfire becomes a character. The tiniest one insists on playing the good blade, which is honestly excellent casting. A lanky boy shapes a bow from a green stick, strings it with impatient cordage, and fires a blunt reed that thunks the dust a heroic 3 feet away. The camp applauds as if he pierced the moon. He grins, corrects his grip thumbs, doing the ancestral micro-dance you practiced with flint, and tries again. This time the reed skips twice and kisses the ring of stones you've been using as a target. Historians still argue whether adults carefully stage such lessons, or whether children mostly taught themselves in roaming packs that shadowed real work. Either way, the result is the same competence wrapped in delight. Kid culture leaves archaeology behind like glitter. You notice a toy-sized bundle of grass with a seed-haired face, a tiny scraper chip turned into a pretend knife, a shell string knotted clumsy and perfect. Quirky tidbits, some Ice Age. Clay figurines carry fingerprints that match adolescents rather than grown-ups, as if teenagers were the studio assistants or the artists, squishing lions and people out of mud between rainstorms. There are also little practice points too small to hunt anything substantial, perfect for learning hands. If a future archaeologist mapped this clearing, they would find a syllabus written in crumbs, chips and laughter. The ground becomes a gym and a classroom. Children balance on fallen logs to tutor their ankles. They play freeze when a jay calls, then explode into motion when a partner clicks tongue, twice the stealth and sprint drill disguised as silliness. They throw, but mostly they retrieve the learning. The boring half of success reset faster than you brag. Your hobbies at home suddenly look like cousins, the craft night that quietly trains fine motor control and patience, the strategy game that whispers map reading and resource budgeting, the pickup run that teaches drafting in a V like migrating birds who invented reply all. At the stream, 3 kids negotiate a civil engineering contract with stones. They dam divert and then ceremoniously release the flood, shrieking at the ripples they made. You crouch, suggest a V-shaped channel, and watch eyes widen when the water obeys. Payment arrives in the universal currency of wet thumbs up. Their project drifts into hygiene theatre mud masks, splash wars, and the solemn appointment of a splash judge, whose rulings are chaotic but strangely fair. Joke 2, the judge recuses themselves on cases involving cousins, citing a conflict of giggle interest. Midday heat presses everyone into shade, and the curriculum switches to sound. Someone uncases a bone flute holes rubbed smooth by 100 songs and breathes a scale that tastes like cool water. Mainstream fact, some of the oldest instruments we know are bone and ivory flutes, more than 30 or 40,000 years old. Evidence that music has been lullaby, signal and glue since deep time. You try a note and produce a noise like a goose with opinions. The ring laughs softly, encouragement disguised as comedy, and the player shows you how to purse, how to let breath be a rope you climb instead of a door you slam. Elsewhere, the market opens tiny trading of treasures, glossy seeds, a feather, a particularly distinguished pebble. The haggling is theatre. The lesson is practicing fairness with prizes that sting no one to lose. A boy offers 3 pretty nothings for your secret. How did you make the leaf boats float this morning? You barter down to 2 nothings and a joke, then demonstrate. Their little economy teaches value, bluff generosity, and the intoxicating power of a good story about why your pebble is obviously superior to all known pebbles in the Northern Hemisphere. 2 kids reenact adult conflict with wooden sticks for words. You took my scraper. I insult the meat until you share. I share, but I remember. They collapse giggling, then stage a rematch with the roles reversed. They're learning scripts, yes, and also how to step out of scripts to improvise a piece that saves face. Historians still argue whether such mock disputes actively build moral reasoning, or simply mirror it. But either way, the camp's code sneaks into muscle memory where it's hard to shake loose when real tempers spark. As shadows lengthen, the cave mouth becomes theatre. Fire flicker makes painted legs walk. Small hands turn into animals' ears into silhouettes. One brave soul adds a dot of charcoal to a bison flank and then retreats scandalised by their own audacity. You appoint them assistant to the regional bison, earning a snort you'll treasure. Joke 3, the title comes with full benefits, 1 extra berry and unlimited bragging rights. Play slides into art and back again, because categories are a teacher's trick. To bodies, it's all rehearsal for attention and control. Risk is portioned like food. Sharp edges and deep water live inside soft boundaries. Adults within earshot, older kids on voluntary duty, and the group's humour. Ready, the instant fear gets big. When someone trips, the first response is silence, the diagnostic kind, then a chorus of "you're okay," which is less medical analysis and more spell. Mainstream addendum lullabies across cultures, slow heart rates and ease stress. You hear one now, low and repetitive, and feel your own body comply even though you're not the target audience. This is safety as choreography learned young and retaught nightly. Darker now and the cooperative games begin. A relay of embers moves from hearth to hearth, kids learning the choreography of not burning anything you love. A line forms to pass water to skins without spilling. It's harder than it looks, easier than it feels like it should be. Someone scratches tally marks for team left and team right, then forgets to keep score because the task has become its own prize. Your chest does that warm expansion it saves for competence wrapped in kindness, the same feeling that sneaks up on you when a pickup team suddenly moves like a flock. Night folds down. The smallest scientists turn heavy at the hinge of your elbow, and you deliver them to the pile of cousins and friends that constitutes a bed. A tiny hand pats your cheek with the solemn authority of a very junior supervisor approving your performance. On the edge of sleep, a thought ripens your hobbies, share bones with these games. When you knit, you are making chord. When you play pickup, you are learning to draft in a V. When you role-play around a table, you rehearse talk under pressure with jokes. Different props, same species. Dusk pulls a blanket up to your shoulders and your brain, helpful as ever, whispers its favourite bedtime story. Something might be out there. You do your modern ritual, check the door lock that doesn't exist, and then perform the ancient version, a slow walk around the perimeter. Eyes, soft ears, greedy nose, honest. The fire's radius is a gentle planet. Beyond it, the dark is a sea with opinions. Your startle reflex perches on a little branch inside your ribs, ready to flap once and fly if a twig snaps wrong. Joke one, you assure your reflex you're extremely brave, and then nearly levitate when a frog coughs like a sarcastic uncle. The camp settles into night watchfulness without a roll call. An elder who naps in the afternoon tends the fire after midnight, because insomnia earns a job. A nursing mother dozes light with one ear turned to the path. A teen who swears they're not tired becomes the sky watcher, because patterns are their love language. Mainstream fact to anchor the hush in some forager groups studied, today, sleep staggers naturally so that across the whole night, someone is almost always awake. An organic sentinel model that keeps embers alive and surprises rare. You hear it in the rhythm. Shuffle, whisper, poke the coals, repeat. You lay sticks in a thoughtful geometry, thin dry ones, to catch thicker ones to last a charred elbow, to throw heats sideways under the hides. The ash you scatter in a faint ring around the hearth is not a force field. But it's a decent message to insects, please respect the boundary. You tuck a smudge of pungent leaves onto a cool ember, so smoke meanders upward, like a lazy rope mosquito diplomacy that smells a bit like last night's dinner, remembered by a forest. The ochre on your cheek now a faint dust itches. You leave it. Part camouflage, part ritual, part I belong right here. Fear, you notice, comes in flavours. Fear of cats wears whiskers in your imagination and paces. Fear of other people has edges that feel like the wrong kind of sharp. Fear of emptiness. No water, no food creeps in quietly and suggests long walks in the morning. Historians still argue whether the main nighttime threat across deep time was claws or neighbours' lions or rival camps. The answer probably changed with place and century. What doesn't change is the body's polite attention to both possibilities. You sleep lighter when the reeds move wrong. You breathe quieter when laughter on the wind is not yours. The dark is not empty. It is informative if you let it speak slowly. Owls do paperwork in the canopy. A nightjar stitches the sky with a zipper sound. Frogs grade the weather. You catalogue without trying. That rustle is wind arguing with leaves. That crack is a branch giving up. That pad stop belongs to something small and undecided. When the fire pops, your startled bird flaps once, then resettles. Joke 2, you tell the bird it can clock out at dawn and it files a complaint about unpaid overtime. You keep a torch-handy, sap-rich stick that burns with the showmanship of a festival and a basket of punky wood to coax smoke because light persuades some creatures to mind their manners and smoke convinces others that your camp is weird and not worth visiting. Mainstream fact with the soot-stained cave ceilings across Europe carry layered smoke marks from torches and hearths, a time-lapse of nightly roots and deep illuminations. People walked fire into darkness and made the walls answer with animals. Tonight you keep fire near and make the grass answer with nothing. Both are victories. Superstition sidles up like a cat that used to be a god. You know the practical reasons for the ash ring. The smoke the sentinel naps, but you also touch the little charm tied to your belt. A tooth smoothed by decades of thumbs that belonged to someone who carried you before you existed. Quirky, tidbit long strings of pierced animal teeth and claws are found in Ice Age burials. They clatter and shine, but they also likely meant protection, prestige, and continuity wearable arguments that luck can be borrowed and fear can be negotiated. You don't think the tooth is magic, you just think your hand remembers bravery when it holds it. Across the embers, the Minister of Morale, self-appointed, widely ratified, tells a low, ridiculous story about the time a porcupine out-argued the camp's cleverest trap, and laughter rolls like a small wave that smooths the night's fur the right way. Watchfulness doesn't have to taste like vinegar. A light mood keeps eyes open without turning minds brittle. When the story ends, a few bodies stand, stretch, and swap places without saying why. You read the choreography anyway. The one with better night eyes takes the shadow side. The one with the good ear sits where the wind carries whispers. The one who needs sleep right now lies with feet inward. Toes pointed toward the embers like flowers to the sun. Sleep comes in sips. You drift under surface, stoke, sip again. The fire gives you little homework assignments, add stick check, spark, scrape back a safe edge. You do them on autopilot with the same tenderness you bring to late-night phone charges and last lock checks. Historians still argue whether the famous first sleep and second sleep were universal in deep time or mostly a medieval household rhythm under long winter nights. Your body shrugs labels are less important than the felt reality that nights are not one piece. They are braided. Once the night pretends to be trouble. A rhythm pad stop grows heavier closer. You and the friend beside you straighten a fraction. You angle the torch low so the flame brightens the ground without blinding you. Two sets of eye shine, pause, assess, then veer with an offended rustle. You let your breath out slowly through your nose the way elders taught quiet is a currency you spend carefully. Joke 3 whispered in the exhale, you award yourself a medal for not screaming like a kettle. Later, a very human trouble tries to sprout. Two voices tangle at the edge of the hide's accusation reply, the scrape of pride getting its shoes on. The counsellor no badge, just credibility rolls up on an elbow and retells the situation in a way that lets both save face. The good blade went missing because everyone loves it very much and it volunteered to make friends. In the morning the blade will give a speech about sharing and all will applaud. Chuckles replace sparks. Crisis averted, sleep resumed, moral added softly to the camp's nightly code. Do not let small heat become large fire. Your mind, traitorous and loyal, generates a few monsters on its own. A branch becomes an antlered shadow. A root becomes a crouch. You let the images pass like clouds and keep the checks practical. Wind still steady. Smell still ordinary. Stars still where stars should be. You remember a trick an auntie taught, count backwards while naming 3 things you can hear, 2, you can smell, 1 you can touch. The world reassembles from ingredients. The monsters slouch off bored by your competence. Another quirky habit surfaces. Someone sprinkles a pinch of meal into the fire with a tiny apology for any restless ancestors treading nearby. You don't need to believe to appreciate the effect. Rituals bundle worry into a movement that resolves. If you have ever tapped the plane twice at the door or kissed your fingers to a photo by the bed, same software, older version. Historians still argue whether such apotropaic behaviours are mere noise or real social glue that reduces panic and sharpens group timing. Either way, the fire accepts the gift with an appreciative hiss. Near dawn, the watch changes without a word. The elder's eyes get that glassy, satisfied glaze of a person who has paid their night tax. The teen whose star lecture ran long slumps against a log and slides into soft snoring, the original thunder returns. You rise hips, registering the hours, and make one last slow walk. The path is unchanged except for tiny signatures fox prints stitched, like small commas, a moth folded like a paper idea, a damp patch where dew considered becoming a puddle, and then thought better of it. When you finally lie down, the ground admits you like a letter into an envelope. The fire has gone from talkative to thoughtful sounds, reduced to the slow fall of a coal collapsing into itself. Your startled bird tucks its head under its wing. You're not fearless, you are correctly calibrated by 1,000,000 nights and 1,000 camps. Lock-checking a door is not neurotic, it's a city version of tracing the ash ring with your toe. You smile into your hide. The night has been long and mostly uneventful, the definition in any epoch of good security. After the night's careful listening, morning gives you permission to make noise and leave traces. You sit by the hearth with your palms full of small, shining circles, shell seed and eggshell like a pocket full of moons. The camp's little workshop opens without a bell. Someone grinds ochre on a flat stone until the powder turns the air sunset red. Someone else threads beads with a bone awl and the patience of a saint with good lighting. You join because this is how a day declares itself: eat together, work together, look like you belong together. Your first string clacks softly against your wrist. Today's playlist, no headphones required. Joke 1. The recommendation algorithm is walking distance. If you admire someone's bracelet, it suggests try giving them one. You start with circles cut from ostrich eggshell, the Paleolithic's favourite confetti. A shard becomes a disc under the drill's steady twist. A disc becomes a bead becomes a pattern, and a pattern becomes a sentence you can wear. Mainstream anchor archaeologists have found ostrich eggshell beads across Africa, going back tens of thousands of years, and their sizes and styles even map ancient social networks, like seeing who follows whom, but with dustier thumbs. You lay light, light, dark, light, your mother's camp's rhythm, then add 2 seeds from a friend's river as a nod to where you've walked. The bracelet is small talk and autobiography in one loop. Pigment turns fingers into storytellers. You mix powdered ochre with a dab of fat and a whisper of plant sap until it spreads like a thought that knows where it's going. With it, you sign today's face a stripe that says, I'm with them, a dot that says, I've earned this mile, a smear that says, mosquitoes please reconsider. Remember last night's mosquito diplomacy, same recipe, new mood. Mainstream fact with a crosshatch people were engraving patterns on ochre blocks at places like Blombos Cave more than 70,000 years ago. Lines on stone, lines on skin, the impulse to repeat a mark until it means us is old and stubborn. Your cheek warms as it dries, tightening you gently into the group. Paint is temporary. Sometimes you want your story to outlast rain. A friend shows you the bone needle that whispers tattoo without saying the word. The needle is fine, the hand practiced. Historians still argue whether the earlier skin marking was common in your deep past or only sporadic, because skin rarely fossilizes, and the evidence is shy ice mummies keep secrets better than bare rock. What you know is simpler. The desire to carry a sign you can't misplace walks straight from your bones to your skin. You press paint instead today, commitment for a day, not a decade, and keep the idea filed under when I'm braver. The camp tests instruments the way a kitchen tests knives, quickly, critically, joyfully. Your bone flute from yesterday naps in its wrap like a sleeping bird. Today you wake it. Your first note still sounds like a goose with opinions, but the second lands nearer to dawn. A friend taps a rhythm on a hollow log. Another scrapes a notched stick with a bone, so that sparks of sound jump like fish. Mainstream fact, some of the oldest known flutes carved from bird bone and mammoth ivory in the Swabian Jura are over 40,000 years old. People have been trading breath for song since before your favourite playlist learned to shuffle. You lean into the beat and realise rhythm is camp glue. It synchronises feet for future walks, hearts for present tasks, and tempers when someone is one good blade joke away from sulking. A hush falls when the cave asks for a visit. Torches wake and purr. Smoke writes cursive on the ceiling. You shoulder the glow and enter the cool, the sound wrapped tight by stone. The walls already know you. They've been waiting under a varnish of darkness with animals poised mid-breath. Torchlight makes bodies shiver into motion. Remember how fire turned painted legs into animation last time, the magic still works. Horses spangle with spots. Bison swell with a painter's mercy for muscle. Hands bloom in negatives as if the wall exhaled the people who pressed themselves there. Joke 2 kept gentle so that the cave doesn't echo it back too loud. You try one-hand stencil and manage to invent high five with geology. You watch the best painter move. They choose bulges that lend a shoulder to an aurochs cracks that already know where a hind leg bends. They dab a little charcoal into a bison's eye, and unfair life arrives. You grind a stick of manganese until your fingers sing the same song as your cheek stripe. Quirky tidbit, some researchers have found that the most resonant spots in caves, the places that naturally boom when you hum, often coincide with clusters of paintings, as if artists and singers conspired with acoustics to make the walls answer. You test it low hum, hand on stone, and feel the cave purr back like a cat that was a god in an earlier chapter. The torch sputters in approval. Not all marks are pictures. Signs, chevrons, ladders, dots repeat like the skeleton of a grammar. You copy a tiny ladder near a bison's flank because ladders help people reach things, including meanings. Historians still argue whether these signs are hunting tallies, season markers, clan badges, or just satisfying motifs. They also argue whether caves are sanctuaries, classrooms, or late-night galleries, curated by teenagers with smoky hands. Your body shrugs into comprehension anyway. The repetition feels like counting, the placement feels like emphasis, and the act of copying feels like learning to pronounce a word you already know. Back at the fire, you accessorize because of course you do. A string of teeth becomes a sound you can wear. A bracelet jingles a tiny rhythm that says me when you walk. You notch your new throwing stick with a mark that is not a picture yet, but might become one if tomorrow praises it. Remember the arrows with ownership notches and the way credit travels with the mark. You add yours small not to hoard glory, but to let fairness find you in a hurry. Brands aren't a modern accident. They're old solutions to whose is this and who owes what carved into wood and bone instead of glowing on billboards. Trade sneaks into art like salt sneaks into soup. A woman from the river wears a bead you cannot source locally. A man from the ridge carries a pendant shaped by hands you've not seen before. Mainstream reality check shells appear far inland in ancient sites. An obsidian from one volcano ends up sharp and shining, hundreds of kilometres away, worn symbols as passports and receipts in a web that predates money by a very long fireside chat. You give a bracelet, later you will receive a pigment you've only ever heard described as evening and fox. Generosity is fashion that lasts. The kids, of course, claim a corner of culture as their own. You notice narrow finger flutings on a fringe of wall wavy lines drawn with fingertips in soft cave film and laugh when the widths say small hands did this. That's your quirky hint for the day. By measuring finger widths and proportions, scholars have traced some marks to children playing and practicing inside the art your mind wants to file as strictly adult. The idea that kids helped decorate the dark is both obvious, kids help with everything, and slightly scandalous, kids help with everything. Joke 3, the assistant to the regional bison adds a tiny dot and retires tenure secure. The day winds down and you become a sandwich of smells: smoke, ochre, warm skin, a hint of crushed resin. Your wrists keep telling your new sentence every time you move. If someone asked what the marks mean, you could translate, but you don't need to. The camp already reads you the river seeds say you walked. The ladder says you paid attention. The charcoal under your nail says you touched the wall and the wall didn't object. You find your hide, lay the flute where your hand can find it in the dark, and let your eyes half close. Before sleep, one last small rite, you press your palm on a flat stone near the fire, and dust ochre over it, not to last, just to remind yourself that marks are promises as much as pictures. Tomorrow you'll wipe it clean and make another. That's the rhythm ephemeral, on skin durable, on bone eternal in habit. You once thought logos, playlists, tattoos and team colours were inventions of crowded centuries. Tonight you wear their roots and hum their melody. The camp glows in bracelets and smudges. The fire approves. Your startled bird tucks its head, and your wrist, a quiet metronome of clacks, keeps time for a species that likes to be seen. Smoke curls like a sleepy hand over the hearth while someone clears their throat in that polite way that means I have a situation. You slide closer because the fire is also the clinic, and the clinic takes walk-ins. A palm hosts a splinter, a shin, a shallow cut, a shoulder. The stubborn ache of yesterday's heroics with the atlatl. You rinse what can be rinsed. Cool. Stream water poured from high, so it falls like a tiny waterfall and pat with clean moss that has not met yesterday's stew. You're not reinventing medicine. You're remembering it clean, calm, warm, watch. First tools water, fire and composure. You wash, you warm, you breathe. A smear of honey goes on the cut, thin, shining smug. Mainstream fact honey's low water activity and gentle peroxide chemistry make it naturally antibacterial. People across ages used it to dress wounds, and some healers still do. The sting quiets. A dusting of fine charcoal along the edge keeps flies undecided and gives the patient a fashionable matte finish. Joke 1, you present the look as Campcore Skincare launching a wellness brand with absolutely no packaging. For the splinter you coax with a thorn tip and the patience you once reserved for untangling earbuds. A warm stone encourages the skin to loosen its grip. A dab of fat persuades the intruder to leave with dignity. The patient hisses through teeth, then laughs when the sliver flashes in the light like a villain caught mid-monologue. You hand them a clean leaf to press the Paleolithic equivalent of a themed bandage with cartoon mammoths. The circle approves in the currency of nods. Bigger trouble requires choreography. A friend limps in with an ankle that tried to negotiate with a hole and lost. You compare with your fingers' heat-swelling range. The ankle gets cold creek duties, submerge, counter-relent, then a compress soaked in an astringent brew of mashed leaves and clean water. You splint with bark, bind with soft hide, remind the owner that pride is not a weight-bearing joint. Mainstream anchor, skeletons from deep time show healed fractures and serious injuries that would have crippled without care. Someone fed and protected those bodies while bones knit. You can feel that truth in the camp's gentle bossiness each sit. Let the fire do part of the work. Pain is a language you translate with plants and heat. A twig of willow steeps into a bitter tea, your face puckering like a polite critic. Inside it, precursors of salicylates whisper less ache. Yarrow leaves get chewed and pressed on a scrape to help bleeding mind its manners. Plantain the footpath, plant smug and useful, makes a poultice that tells skin to stop throwing tantrums over stings. Historians still argue whether pollen clumps of yarrow and other herbs found near famous burials reflect medicinal bouquets placed with intent or plant traces tracked in by rodents with busy schedules. Either way, your tongue and hands know the recipes. Heat therapy wears many hats. Heated stones wrapped in damp plant fibre become compresses that unknot shoulders. A little cautery. Yes, the spicy one taps a small bleeder that refuses to take a hint. The ember touched like punctuation there. You do it quickly with the same mercy you'd use to pluck a thorn from a child's foot mid-laughter. Your friend swears quietly in Paleolithic, then thanks you with the solemnity due someone who kept the red where it belongs. Not all medicine is plant and fire. Some is posture, sit so your ribs can lift. Lie so the ache can drain toward the ground. Some is time change the wrapping when the smell suggests a committee meeting. Some is hygiene smoke bath before sleep to discourage insects. Ash scrub hands like rustic soap because alkali's helpful and fashionably grey. Remember our mosquito diplomacy from dawn. Same smoke, new mission. Joke 2, you promote yourself to head of spa and sanitation, which mostly means enforcing wash your hands with the terrifying authority of a kindly aunt. A baby fusses red-cheeked and an auntie performs diagnostic theatre that is actually science. Feel the fontanelle, check the gums for swollen ridges, watch the belly breathe, sniff the diaper area with the seriousness of a sommelier notes of definitely needs attention. Teething. The remedy is simple, chew twig, creak cool on the gums, a lullaby in the key of everything will be fine. Mainstream aside, with a hush infant-directed song slows heart rates and calms crying. You can feel the whole camp exhale on the downbeat. The startle bird in your ribs dozes. Birth is medicine's final exam and daily miracle. The camp's midwives know badges, endless credibility arrange warmth, water and hands. Positions are practical, squatting, kneeling, leaning into another body. Cord gets tied with clean fibre cut with an edge kissed by flame, the stump dried and watched. A tea of leaves that ease cramps is sipped in grateful microgulps. Historians still argue whether maternal risk in deep time was uniformly catastrophic or mitigated significantly by skilled midwifery grandmother, support and sane spacing. Your eyes see competence braided with tenderness and your spine relaxes. Charms walk alongside herbs, not behind them. A tooth on a string swings over a feverish forehead counting breaths. A mark of ochre crosses a wrist to tell courage where to sit. Quirky tidbit for your bedside drawer, some caves exude a soft creamy mineral called moon milk, scraped and powdered in later eras as a cure-all poultice for skin and sore throats. Whether your camp believes in moon milk or prefers the creek's honest cold, the gesture is the same, you materialize hope so your hands can hold it. Placebo is not an insult. It is a partner less. Fear, lower stress, better sleep, more healing. On a shelf of stone, a little kit waits for harder choices. A flake thinned to a whisper for lancing a hollow bird bone for suction. Ligatures twined from gut and a needle for the sober wisdom that sometimes you must let pressure go. You are conservative, not theatrical. You favour drain and clean over grand theories. Still whispers persist of skulls opened and lives continued. Mainstream fact trepanation, careful removal of a disc of skull appears in prehistoric burials worldwide, and many skulls show bone regrowth around the hole, a sign that people survived the procedure. The idea is scary. The evidence says the hands were steady. Sickness that floats, coughs, fevers gets a different protocol. You shift the sleeper a little downwind, not exile, just airflow logic. Broth becomes law, hot water with tuber and fat sipped more often than thirst asks. You burn herbs that smell like clean rain in a small smoky act of kindness. The fire's perimeter turns into a convalescent ward, and scheduling becomes part of treatment watch through the night in easy shifts so no one burns out and no ember dies. Joke 3, you institute rotating night rounds and immediately forget who's on duty, because everyone volunteers at once. Classic camp problem. Medicine-like tool-making is a school without walls. Children watch stitches that close a hide and learn in passing the confidence is to close a shallow cut with spider silk someday. Teenagers circulate water from the creek and absorb the tacit curriculum carry gently speak softly, see more than you say. The elder narrates scars like a library tour, this one from a cat's lesson in humility, this one from a rock that refused to share the path, this smooth white line from the timer healer with sure hands and honey, saved a fool who will now always share the good blade. Your own body learns the slow rules. Rest is not laziness. It is instruction to tissues. Food is not reward. It is scaffolding for repair. Laughter is not disrespectful at the bedside. It is analgesia with no known overdose. Historians still argue whether dedicated spiritual specialists call them shamans were full-time roles or part-time talents braided into everyday skill. Your camp's reality feels like a gradient. The one who dreams well also breathes courage into ribs. The one who sings well also times compresses to the rhythm of calm. By late afternoon, the clinic quiets. The shin-cut naps, the splinter veteran gossips with a leg up the ankle, sits like a minor deity piled with offerings of leaves and sympathy. You tidy the clinic that isn't one boil and dry the bird bone rebake the needles point in the ember. Lay tools where night won't swallow them. You wash your hands again, ash and water. And a final smoke pass and feel the day leave you like a weight handed to the ground. Tomorrow someone will wake with a new question. Rash, ache heart that races when owls talk too loudly, and the answers will again be part plant, part practice, part performance of comfort. You're not so different from your future self with a drawer full of balms and a tray of vitamins. The labels change, the species hum beneath them does not. Around this fire, health is a verb in the present tense washbind, sing, rest, repeat. The medicine works not only because plants know chemistry, but because people know care. That is the old prescription reissued nightly refilled at the hearth and taken with water. The day warms, and a ribbon of dust announces visitors before faces do. You stand brush ochre from your palms and feel that pleasant click in your chest exchange mode. The other camp arrives with the same polite choreography you use, hands, open eyes, bright jokes cocked, but safety on. You offer water first because manners outrank inventory. Then the display begins not in a market voice but in the tone of cousins comparing pockets. A woman unwraps a pouch of dark glassy stone, and the whole circle leans in as if smelling rain. Obsidian edges, like secrets, shine like yes. You answer with a string of eggshell beads that clack a note you've been practicing. Nobody says deal, everyone says remember. Mainstream anchor, to ground the glow long before coins and shops materials travelled far. Obsidian can be traced by its volcanic fingerprint across hundreds of kilometres, and shells show up deep inland in burials that felt the sea only in stories. The web is older than receipts. You thread a single obsidian flake onto your string as if it were a star, and lift it so the sun can try it on. It fits. Exchange here is not a cash register, it's a weather system. You hand over a small, almost comically tidy bundle of dried meat, yesterday's slow heat archived for today's diplomacy. In return you receive resin that smells like pine and possibility perfect for glue, or a calming sniff when your startlebird forgets its manners. You log it in the quiet ledger behind your ribs, gave meat received resin, increased goodwill, future favours probable. Joke 1 you label the ledger, subscription plan billed in tubers, paid in smiles with unlimited rollover of gratitude. Gifts move as slowly as stars and as quickly as laughter. A youth ties one of your river seeds into their hair and starts a trend in under a minute. A grandmother fingers the beads, asks about your mother's camp and slips you a pigment nub the colour of fox twilight. This is commerce only if you define commerce as ritualised caring that comes with cool accessories. Historians still argue whether such exchanges were primarily about calories and tools or mostly about alliances, marriages, visiting rights and the gentle surveillance that keeps neighbours decent. Your body votes for yes, you feel safer already. Someone suggests a meat share to commemorate the day and the fire agrees. You all sit in the sweet math of portioning small pieces first to those who walked the farthest, a soft cut to the elder, who has been entertaining visiting toddlers with a bone flute rendition of Please Don't Climb That. The best slice goes with theatrical reluctance to the visitor who arrived carrying the glittering weaponized glass. Insult the meat kicks in automatically. So skinny a fox wouldn't bother must have walked here itself to be generous, and everyone laughs the same laugh in the same language. Credit travels, pride deflates, bonds inflate. You feel your shoulders drop a notch you didn't know they were holding. Trade is rarely single-serving. After the meal, a quiet corner becomes the help desk. Someone asks if the ridge still leaks water in the small month. Someone else wants to know whether the hip-high grass hides holes right now, or only in the big month. Information is currency with wings. It spends itself by multiplying. You offer your own update. Bees are in a cooperative mood if you bring smoke with opinions. The honey-guide birds you add have been extra chatty, a cross-species partnership review that earns a respectful chuckle from the visitors. Quirky tidbits, some camps sweeten relationships by sharing beeswax for making polish and sealant. It's less delicious than honey and more useful than a compliment, which is why it's both. A young man from the visitors produces something ridiculous and wonderful, a string bag woven so fine it looks like a thought. You trade it for a bone needle and a little coaching on pressure flaking, then immediately regret promising the bag to your friend because it looks perfect hanging from your wrist like an argument for being organised. You keep your word because that's the point. Joke 2, you do the thing where you just try it on to make sure the strap adjusts and then theatrically hand it over like a magnanimous hero. The camp awards you 3 eye rolls and a bead for valiant restraint. Delayed giving hums under the day like a baseline. You press a small gift into a visitor's palm with the unspoken clause later elsewhere. That clause has a name in some deserts, a long cycle exchange system that spreads risk across camps, so that when one place fails, friends far away remember you with soup. You don't use the word, you use the habit. Your portfolio, as you joked earlier, diversifies, as in you add people who would walk a day to check your fire if storms ate your maps. Historians still argue whether such networks grew mainly from romance and marriage ties, or from peer friendships and namekin that hop customary lines. You suspect the answer is whatever makes a good story in a safe bed. Across the clearing, 2 elders examine each other's walking sticks, like duelists comparing swords and grandfathers comparing fishing lures. Each praises what the other has, then downplays their own, then somehow swaps without anyone saying so. This style of gifting praise-downplay exchange keeps status on a short leash and affection on a long one. You practice it later with a viziert's cloak. Too fine for walking, you say it will catch every thorn. 5 minutes later you are wearing it, and 5 minutes after that you are pretending it always belonged to you while the owner tries on your hide with the air of a person who just discovered pockets. Some exchanges are formal enough to make the air stand still. A pair of youths from opposite camps trade matched tokens, a notched sliver of bone snapped from one piece, so the edges prove kinship when reunited. The halves nest like sleeping fish in a palm. Quirky but plausible echo from wider human habits, split tokens and tally sticks have long served as low-tech verification. 2 pieces say we were here together in a language you can't counterfeit easily. Whether your deep ancestors used this exact trick or cousins of it, the logic tastes right proof that outlasts memory and travels without gossip's distortions. Under the trees, a storyteller performs long-distance maintenance. They recite a genealogy that includes the living, the wandering, and the properly dead, ensuring nobody edits anyone else out by accident. Names are roots, roots are favours. Favours are the kind of wealth that doesn't rot. Mainstream aside, in small-scale societies, visiting rites and marriage exchanges often braid several camps into a circuit, and annual or seasonal gatherings knit those circuits tighter with dances, ritual tests, and yes, spectacular gift shows that look for all the world like marketplaces of generosity. You've been to one. Remember the big laughing ceremony when brazenness and beauty had to be carried home because legs were tired. It looked like shopping. It felt like belonging. Practical trade keeps humming beneath the pageantry. You swap a light, well-shaped digging stick for a handful of brittle, perfect fish bones, ideal for needles. You promise a future lesson on making cord that doesn't insult your fingers. Tools drift across the fire like migratory birds, and each carries a little personality ownership, notches, charm knots, a smear of pigment the colour of "Don't Lose Me." The camp's young economist, a child with good pockets, tallies nothing and remembers everything. Joke 3, they announce they're opening a bank which turns out to be a hollow log where everyone stores special pebbles, and somehow confidence rises anyway. By late afternoon the ledger in your ribs looks like a tapestry resin ode to you, meat owed by you stories traded, a walk promised a visit, invited a small rescue of someone's toddler, executed flawlessly in exchange for a future rescue of your pride when you inevitably trip over nothing in front of everyone. Historians still argue whether prehistoric trade was down-the-line objects hopping camp to camp like gossip, or whether people themselves carried valuables across vast ranges through seasonal migrations and romantic adventures. The debate is tidy. The reality is mixed. You've just watched an obsidian flake change owners 3 times without moving a step. Before the visitors leave, you stage the farewell the way people always have, with small gifts that feel like jokes, and jokes that feel like small gifts. Someone slips a glossy seed into your palm, a twin of the one their cousin wears, so that months from now, you can greet a stranger by touching the bead and saying, "I know your people's colour." You offer a flute note that finally sounds less like a goose with opinions and more like a creek remembering rain. The camps echo it back. The path opens. A ribbon of dust writes later into the evening. You sit a little lighter in meat, a little richer in luck. Your wrist clacks the eggshell rhythm you arranged this morning, and the new obsidian star on your string tinks against a seed from far away. You consider the math of it all, calories converted to friendship effort, converted to invitations risk, converted to a phone book of places where your name is a passcode. This is not nostalgia, it's strategy with good snacks. Your future self, the one ordering takeout for a sick neighbour, the one lending a tool and trusting it will come home. Speaking Stories recognises the architecture. The accounts will balance eventually or close enough, but the real interest compounds in quiet. If something goes wrong, you will not be alone. Morning opens like a door you've walked through 1,000 times, because you have. The path out of camp is stitched into the land with the delicate arrogance of a thread that knows exactly where the needle is going. Heel ball toe, your body keeps the trails beat the way a bone flute keeps a tune. You're not just walking, you're commuting. Paleolithic edition past the scratchy bush that always tries to autograph your calf, over the log the kids use as a balance beam along the sandy bend where the trackway reads like a newspaper hoof commas, bird semicolons, the occasional dramatic exclamation mark from a cat who had opinions last night. Joke 1, there's no traffic unless you count a stubborn stick that refuses to yield the right of way. Your home is several addresses at once. The everyday one is a cluster of hides and poles cinched by clever knots, a living tent that exhales when the wind presses and tenses, when rain rehearses threats. You know the setup by muscle peg here, lift there, cross the ridgepole with the swagger of someone who can assemble furniture with no instructions. When seasons turn coy or mean, you upgrade. In the cold big months, you drift to a sheltered hollow and sink your living room half into the earth, pit house thinking, roof low and thick. Smoke is tempted up through a hole that doubles as weather forecast. Mainstream anchor archaeologists have found winter houses sunk into ground across subarctic and temperate zones, and entire regions hosted seasonal villages and camps long before agriculture. Pacific northwest plank houses for the stormy months, smaller fishing stations when salmon ran. Your camp hums with the same logic expand when the sky is unfriendly scatter, when the world is generous. On the high plain, someone shows you a wonder that looks like a riddle, a ring of great bones shouldered into the earth. Tusks arched like frozen waves, hide once stretched tight across a frame you could have seen from the moon if you had a moon seat. Mammoth bone house Ice Age architecture with a ribcage aesthetic. You run your fingers over a socket polished by palms, imagining winters measured in stories and steam. Historians still argue whether such bone palaces were family homes, seasonal refuges, or event spaces for feasts and dancing with names you can't translate. You don't need the final answer to feel the design's warmth shelter as biography built from the world's gifts and the world's ghosts. Between addresses, the road itself is home adjacent. Trails are remembered in feet and sung in mouths. A friend hums the ridgeline notes that lean upward for a climb, flatten for a flatswalk dip for the place where water waits under a stone shaped like a sleeping pig. Quirky but true cousin from across our species. Some peoples carry songlines, maps, you can whistle routes you can remember with your chest when the sky is an unhelpful sheet of brightness. You try a bar and feel your feet find the next corner before your eyes ask. A split stick with 3 cuts marks the turn to the bee tree, the world's most adorable traffic sign. And you smile because bees are still on your subscription plan. Caches make the path generous. Weeks ago, you tucked a net and a loop of cord in a rock alcove drawer. Today you retrieve them with the satisfaction of finding leftovers that aged into better. You leave other small kindnesses for future you and future us, a knot of dry grass in a crook for later tinder, a grinding stone under a flat rock where rain can't sulk on it. Remember how the trade was a weather system. So are your path's supplies. Rain forward and back, little storms of usefulness that keep the seasonal round slick with mercy. Joke 2, you call it cloud storage, and because nobody invented lawsuits yet, the phrase survives. Holidays exist, though you don't call them that. The big salmon month pulls you down a river to the place where the water thrums with silver mussel. The berry month reclines in the uplands like a generous aunt with both hands full. The far winter aggregation, the one with dancing and tokens that snap into each other, draws 4 camps to a meadow and teaches your ribcage to be a drum. Mainstream fact-shell middens pile up like tide clocks along coasts where people revisited the same rich spots season after season, and isotope slices of tooth enamel can record where growing children drank and ate, revealing mobility like rings in a tree. Your teeth would tell the same itinerary: cold water mornings, fat smoke evenings, the mineral signatures of rivers that never bothered to learn your name. At home stops, you make rooms without walls. The hearth is always the kitchen and the parliament. A particular flat rock under the willow is the clinic's waiting room. A scraggly tree with a knot that looks like a sleeping eye is the children's school/court/stage. You sweep without a broom hand's branches the bossy look auntie invented because tidiness means fewer surprises with teeth. The Minister of Morale zones the camp by joke. That log is for tall stories, this patch is for loud songs, the quiet gossip booth is behind the 3 sassy bushes, and as usual, they're right. Your place love is specific: the good sit-stone warm from late sun, the hide that doesn't argue with your knees, the path your toes could walk at midnight with only the fire's purr as a guide. Roots are social, not just spatial. You travel them in braidskin friends, someone who knows birds like gossip, someone who reads clouds like plans, a grandmother who negotiates with children and rivers credibly. The lead is whoever has the most relevant map in their mouth today. Historians still argue whether late Pleistocene groups were mostly residentially mobile. Everyone moves camp a lot or logistically mobile. Small teams range and return to a base, and whether those strategies braided with climate jolts like the Younger Dryas. Your body says the answer is weather and luck. When food stands still, you settle. When food wanders, you glide. When storms get creative, you do both at once and pretend you planned it. Sometimes the path hands you a postcard from deep ancestors who didn't bother with stamps. A string of footprints crosses a mudflat and dries into a story you can read with your palm. Child hops, adult slows, someone carries a small one for 6 steps, then sets them down when the small one complains, and in the dialect of all small ones everywhere. You lay your foot inside a shallow print and feel your heel click into agreement. Mainstream aside, ancient trackways capture afternoons. The wind forgot to erase lines of travel that show families moving together. Sometimes even prints of children placing feet within older tracks to keep dry. You practice the same trick because puddles are persuasive and your calves have opinions. The familiar produces its own superstition. You pat the trail marker rock thrice with 2 fingers because the last time you didn't, the bees were in a mood. You whisper thank you to the willow that hides your clinic tools because medicine enjoys flattery. These are not laws, they are polite nods to chance. Quirky tidbit. Some travellers leave little offerings at thresholds, pebbles piled like low cairns, charcoal dots at a cave's lip as if to say, we passed and did no harm, remember us kindly. You add a bead so small only your future self will notice it, and feel the road answer with a feeling that is either wind or blessing. Evenings on the move are architectures of efficiency. Hides up in under 10 minutes because rain is rehearsing actual performances. Pit scrape started where the old ash ring tells you heat kissed. This ground before. The insult the meat protocol scales when someone returns with a fish that might be described as enthusiastically small. The jokes preempt sulks, and somehow the fish tastes better seasoned with laughter. Remember the mosquito diplomacy: you light the same smudge under a green bough at each new stop, and the bugs accept your passport with only minor bureaucratic delays. Joke 3. You tell the mosquitoes you are not a buffet, but a museum look don't touch, and they consider biting you for research purposes. At last, light your wrist clacks the eggshell rhythm you strung days ago. Obsidian star tink against riverseed. And your eyes study a sky that is less decoration than calendar. The same bright hunter that set the berry month last year is climbing. The same loud river has sharpened its tone. You are not lost, you are scheduled by mountains, RSVP'd by wind. The route ahead is a sentence you can finish even sleepy, and the home behind is a sentence you can start again when the world says now. You bed down a hide to ground you a friend's calf to claim with your toes the fire to keep the dark's mouth considerate. And the path glows in your mind like coals that will be coals again tomorrow. Houses, trails, holidays, not separate boxes, but the same woven thing. You are tenant and traveller neighbour, and nomad renter of clearings and owner of songs. When your future self books flights, clutches boarding passes, curses traffic, and triumphs at the sight of a porch light, they'll be doing this exact choreography only with worse snacks. Grief arrives like weather slow then all at once, and your camp meets it with work. You help sweep a place by the willow, lay hides heat stones, and choose the quieter songs. The elder who knew every bend in the river has stopped borrowing breath, so you borrow their duties for a while. Hands move because hands know what to do. Wash, wrap, whisper thanks. You grind ochre to a soft red and dust it over skin that carried stories longer than any bracelet. The powder clings like sunset, gentling edges the way evening gentles a loud day. Its colour as comfort blood's cousin used to say, "We see you one last time." You set tokens at the elder's side, and all smoothed by decades, a string of seeds, a pebble with an accidental heart objects that say, "In your camp's dialect you mattered and still matter." Mainstream fact to ground the hush, intentional burials with ochre and small goods reach deep into time for our species and sometimes our cousins. At sites like Kafze and skull bodies rest with shells and pigment, and at Shanada Cave several Neanderthal burials show careful placement that looks a lot like respect. You do not say forever. You say more honestly, as long as we remember which is the kind of forever people can actually deliver. Ritual isn't a separate department. It's how grief stays in one piece. You sprinkle a pinch of meal into the fire for anyone passing between worlds. Remember last night's ash ring and mosquito diplomacy. Same hearth, different treaty. The minister of morale, who can make sorrow blink without disrespect, tells a favourite elder story how they once swore at a thorn bush in 3 languages and then apologised to the bush. Laughter arrives small and right-sized. Joke 1, you add that the bush accepted the apology and agreed to stab them less pending good behaviour. The body is carried to a shallow, careful place, wrapped as if for sleep. You and 2 friends sing the path, the same hummed map you use for the ridge and the bee tree, only slower, so the steps land like soft rain. Historians still argue whether early funerals expressed belief in afterlives with specific addresses, or whether they were chiefly for the living knitting torn edges of the group back together with predictable motions and shared tears. Your bones accept both possibilities. The song comforts the traveller if there is a road. It comforts the walkers even if there isn't. Before the last stones are set, a child places a bead, their best one the colour of fox twilight, on the wrapped chest. Trade becomes offering. Offering becomes story. Quirky tidbit in some burials. Tiny shells and ostrich eggshell beads appear in patterns that likely decorated hair or clothing, as if beauty chose to keep walking with us a little farther. You tuck a sliver of the good blade's retired edge, dull safe honoured beneath the hide because the elder taught you to make edges sing, and you want that lesson present even where mouths don't answer. The grave closes. Silence stands up straighter. Someone hangs the elders' names on the air one by one, their child name, their friend name, the teasing title the camp gave them. Inspector of Rain that arrives late. Your own throat adds a harmony that shakes and then steadies. Mainstream note names in many small-scale societies carry obligations and privileges. Speaking them at thresholds, birth, marriage, death rebalances who owes whom and reminds the living, which debts are love not ledgers. You feel that math settle inside you like warm water. After you drift up to the ridge for breath and the sky does what it always does when you look too long, it starts teaching. The big hunter star tilts where it should. The bright river of night finds its channel. Shoulder to shoulder with the friends you trace lines between light syllables of story that double as appointment reminders. Solstice and equinox become verbs here the day the sun turns, the day the sun balances. Mainstream anchor across continents, standing stones and earthworks are aligned to sunrise or sunset at these turning days calendars built from rock and patience. Your version is softer. No stones to heave, only a chorus of necks that remember where the sun pauses before it changes its mind. Meaning gathers around the fire later as it always does. Someone says the elder is now a star, someone else more practical says the elder is in the ground where roots can learn from them. You pour a little fat into the embers and watch the flame flare as if agreeing with both. Historians still argue whether beliefs about spirits and ancestors were broadly shared or wildly local, whether trance journeys and vision quests were everyday tools or rare specialties. You've seen both rhythms. The one who dreams well wakes with instructions that make sense in the morning. The one who doesn't dream well ties a knot in a cord to remember to be kind. In the cave, ritual and art braid until categories blush and shrug. You carry a small torch into the cool and stand where the wall hums back at you. Remember those resonant spots where sound gathers like a cat that used to be a god. You hum the elder's name, The note turns sweet, then dissolves into stone. You press your hand to the wall and puff ochre over it, leaving a negative your palm like a careful absence wrapped in colour, and add one dot below a painted bison's shoulder, where the rock already looks like shelter. Quirky but plausible idea from the night school of anthropology flicker against uneven stone can spark entoptic patterns behind your eyes, little grids and ladders that creep into the signs beside the animals. Whether or not that's what the first painters felt, your body agrees that firelight plus rock equals moving pictures of meaning. Around the edges, small rituals do quiet work. You tie a tooth to your belt for a moon, and then pass it to someone whose grief wakes later. A cousin places a smooth stone in the elder's sleeping spot for 3 nights, then returns it to the river with a kiss. These acts don't require belief in lightning-quick miracles. They only ask you to give time a shape. Mainstream reminder. Ochre turns up not only in graves, but on tools and hearths, as if the colour of sunset and blood keeps annotating the pages of daily life with the same word connection. The sky keeps you honest with its huge metronome. When the bright hunter returns to the pre-dawn east, you'll switch tasks. When the moon thins, you'll consider journeys. When a particular star shoulders a particular tree, you'll meet neighbours by the big river. Joke 2, you promote yourself to high priest of moderately accurate forecasts and vow to accept corrections from owls. The camp approves this governance model. Sometimes belief ignites without grief. On a windless night, someone passes a bowl of water dark as the cave and asks you to look until you see the sky twice above and below. Your face floats between stars, a creature made of breath and curiosity. You're supposed to notice something, maybe your smallness, maybe your hugeness, maybe the way the fire paints a second camp in the bowl. You notice this watching water in the dark slows your heart to the camp's pulse. Historians still argue whether such scrying is sacred technology or sleep-adjacent mindfulness, avant la lettre. Your body shrugs pleasantly and says it helps. Belief also does household chores. You whisper to the ashering pat the trail rock thrice hum before crossing water. Small superstitions that turn unknown into known enough. Quirky tidbit bear skulls arranged in cave niches have been read by some as ritual deposits and by others as tidy storage by practical people who dislike tripping on bones. Either way, someone decided this goes here, and meaning followed the placement like a polite dog. Your camp is less dramatic. You mostly arrange pebbles and promise to be decent, and it works. And sometimes the big questions put on work boots. Why be kind when food is scarce? Because the ledger that matters is long. Why sing names when nobody answers? Because answers arrive in the next mouth, the next hand, the next steadying laugh. Why paint a bison on a wall you visit once a season? Because the wall remembers the way you want to remember faithfully with flattering light. Joke 3, gentle as moss, you suggest painting a checklist instead. And the artist says the bison is the checklist, find water share meat. Don't be a jerk. By the time coals fall into the shape of sleep, you understand belief here. The way you understand cordage or cooking as a set of repeated comforting competencies. You're not required to solve death to behave beautifully around it. You don't need a textbook on the cosmos to watch the sky and keep your promises. You hum the elder's tune once more, low and tired, and feel the camp answer without words. We carry on. We carry you, we carry one another. In the morning we carry water. Trouble starts small like most weather. 2 cousins reach for the same good blade and an entire afternoon threatens to tilt. You feel the camp's temperature change by a half-breath. Bodies reposition like birds when the wind says, Your job is not to stop conflict. Conflict is honest. It's to keep the fire from learning any bad habits. So you inhale, lower your voice to the bedtime register and slide into the choreography your species invented. Clarify, tease, redistribute, remember. First comes the soft net comedy. Which one of you stole the blade I was just about to borrow, you ask, and the circle laughs in the tone that says, we're all on the hook for this one. Teasing pulls pride's thorn without drawing blood. Joke 1, you announce that by camp law the blade must now deliver a speech about sharing. The cousins grin despite themselves. Face muscles stop doing the I'm right square dance. Information arrives in sentences with round edges. Who last had the blade, you awkward, where it sat under a hide that migrated on its own rood, whose task truly needs it now, the one repairing the net before moonrise? You propose a tidy order of turns, and the Minister of Morale baptizes it a prestige rotation, which somehow makes everyone feel upgraded while doing exactly what they would have done anyway. Moral code here is not abstract. It's a sequence of small fair moves that can be carried out sleepy. Mainstream anchor to give this calm. Some bones in many forager societies reverse dominance. Customs keep would-be bosses in check, ridicule teasing and insulting the meat, deflate egos so cooperation stays oxygenated. Credit travels, but it travels on foot and everyone can catch it. That's why your camp's favourite status device is not a crown but a nickname. Power that can be laughed at can be lived with. When jokes aren't enough, you widen the circle. A counsellor no badge, just an easy reputation for results, retells the story in a way that hands each cousin a generous motive. Both care about the camp's gear, both want the work done, both tragically have excellent taste in edges. Then comes the offering. A third person produces their perfectly adequate blade and confesses it is jealous of the famous one. Laughter again. A swap follows, the good blade returns to common stock after the urgent repair. Both cousins get a bead in public for not making a small heat into a big fire. Historians still argue whether such levelling norms are universal among hunter-gatherers, or vary widely with ecology and history. Your circle says variation is real, but tools for peace travel well. Under the jokes run hard rules with soft hands, share food, return tools, tease up, not down, scold in private, praise in stereo. Children learn them by osmosis. Teenagers test the seams and discover that sulking is a poor long-term shelter. You can feel the code in your bones because you've used it on yourself. Remember the last Berry ethics exam. Same curriculum, new chapter. Not all disputes involve knives. A rumour, did someone cut the bee tree without smoke leaving the hive angry, for everyone threatens to turn into factions. You don't hunt the culprit, you reset the norm. The elder calls a bee court half lesson, half theatre. You demonstrate smoke with opinions, bees with boundaries, honey with gratitude. The sentence is not punishment, it's service. The careless one 10 stings this week, with Cool Creek compresses, and learns 3 new lullabies for calming small biters and big egos. Joke 2, you find them. One dramatic story about bees that makes bees look good. Moral codes that teach future competence beat codes that merely tally shame. Sometimes the camp chooses ritualized friction over simmering resentment. One evening pairs who've been circling a disagreement meet by the ash ring to perform a mock duel, not fists but verses. You take turns singing each other's complaints to the bone flute's beat exaggerating flaws until they flip and become funny. Quirky cousin from the North Arctic peoples have used drum song contest to settle feud satire and rhythm as courtroom. Your version ends with applause and exchange of deliberately ridiculous gifts. A very good stick, a certificate of excellence in not falling in holes, and the quiet that follows real relief. Of course peacekeeping has a plan B distance. If teasing ritual and rotation fail camps fission like cells, a few people walk with their feelings until those feelings shrink enough to fit back into jokes. Fission isn't exile, it's a pressure valve. Historians still argue whether high mobility and deep time mostly prevented feuds from sailing up or just postponed them. What you see is elegant when proximity is the problem, geography is a tool. Cooperation. The other half of this chapter isn't just the absence of drama, it's a skill. Watch a hunt form quiet signals eyes patrolling the same horizon, roles chosen by current strengths. The sharp-eyed scouts fan the steady-handed ready the atlatl, the once-injured anchor, the line, and watch for flanks. Nobody gives a speech. Everybody speaks competence. Meat tastes better because it was earned together, and the insult the meat roast that follows is praise in a disguise polite enough for shyer appetites. Fairness threads every shared task. Credit follows the arrow's notch, not just the arm that threw it. The owner of the mark shaft hosts the distribution, then undercuts their own status with self-mockery, so that no one's shadow expands too far. Mainstream reality check, ethnographers among Kalahari foragers documented arrow ownership rules that allocate meat-keeping pride leashed and hunger unfed. Your camp plants the same flag nightly, the person who can be teased is safe to follow. Sanctions exist, but they keep bedtime hours. Chronic takers, those who treat generosity like a hole rather than a loop, get narrated into cautionary tales that make children roll their eyes and remember anyway. Serial hoarders find their gear borrowed more than average. Serial boasters discover their best lines immediately woven into jokes nobody lets them own. The worst sanction is silence a week, where your opinion receives fewer echoes a walk, where your back finds fewer friendly calves to press toes against while sleeping. No stocks, just less chorus. It works because belonging is the camp's warmest blanket. Your code also remembers mercy. After a hard day, a sharp word flies and lands where it shouldn't. You see the wince before you hear the apology. The camp lets the apology finish its work. You add a spoon of fat to the wronged person's bowl and make an exaggerated show of polishing their good blade with a leaf, until it gleams like a moon. The joke says what the words are trying to: we're fine, stay. Not every conflict is internal. Tracks at the river say strangers are near, and the watch gets taller. You prepare hospitality water, a neutral sitting shung stone, your open palms alongside caution, people placed where the view is good, kids braided into the middle of the circle. Historians still argue whether lethal intergroup conflict in the deep past was frequent or rare compared to later settled societies. Skeletal evidence tells mixed stories, healed fractures, occasional massacres like the one at Naturuk in Kenya, and context matters. Your camp's practice is simple. Greet first guard quietly and let gifts talk before pride does. When strangers are friends of friends, jokes arrive faster than tension. When they aren't, your code adds layers, exchange tokens. Shared. Work. Help us lift this hide and names that plug into the long genealogy that weaves camps into a map. You deploy your fox twilight bead like a password. A head tilts, a smile breaks a tunnel dug under suspicion with a single pebble. Underlying all of it is the bedtime theorem you keep proving. Fairness is a feeling made from dozens of observable behaviours repeated until they become weather. Rotate the good tools, announce plans and let better plans replace them without fuss. Praise where ears can hear, correct where hearts won't bruise. Keep jokes kind enough that the lesson survives and the friendship does too. Joke 3 institute mandatory naps for anyone who says in principle before sunset, and watch philosophy convert back into cooperation. As the fire lowers into its lullaby voice, you realise you've spent the day inside an unwritten constitution whose clauses you could hum. You didn't need tablets, you needed repetition and witnesses. Your future office will call it Culture Policy HR. Your group calls it what it calls everything worth keeping habit. The cousins are laughing again, the blade back in common stock, the bee court's new beekeeper practising smoke with opinions, the minister inventing a holiday called Day of Not Taking Yourself So Seriously. You breathe easier, which is the body's way of voting yes on peace. You sit by a 21st century lamp and hold a small glowing rectangle, but your thumbs remember flint. The gestures repeat: pinch, rotate, check the edge, ask the tool to make the next hour gentler. If tonight's long walk through fire, smoke and ochre has a point, it isn't nostalgia, it's calibration. You're not an alien in your own era. You're the latest version of an old animal who does best when meals are shared, work is honest, status is funny, and the dark is met with a little song and a decent ash ring. Start with mornings. The old stand-up around the hearth becomes your breakfast check-in. Stretch water, light, food, quick plan. Put sunlight in your eyes, even a little, your body reads it like that. Ancestral push notification that says wake now. If you can eat with someone because appetite is social and coffee is better when somebody says within earshot. Keep your digging sticks by the door, bag packed, shoes visible, list short. You already know this choreography. You were born with the beat. Tools. Choose tech that extends the hand instead of hijacking the mind. Your phone can be a hand axe or a squirrel depending on settings and mood. Make it more hand axe prune notifications until only the village drummer gets through. Label your gear like arrows with notches. Shared tools come home faster when they have names, and rotate the good blade, make excellence common stock. The open source impulse is Paleolithic. Teach the trick, point to the ridge, let someone else's edge sing tomorrow and call it a win. Eat like a person who learned fire on purpose. Cook simple, share first, salt enough to make joy appear. Honey is still a miracle, fat is still scaffolding, and the Maillard browning that made roots taste like hope is still legal. Keep a pit roast habit for modern life, start something slow on Sundays, so Tuesday you're fed without drama. The old feast lean rhythm is not a moral tale, it's logistics. Store a little, share a little, never insult the meat, but always insult the bragging about the meat. Mainstream anchor, to ride with you into tomorrow. At least 14,000 years ago, people were burying dogs with humans, Bonn Oberkassel, Germany, and the partnership likely runs deeper still. A quiet reminder that companionship and cooperation with other species are not cute add-ons, they are core tech. Walk the dog. It's a watch shift, a weather report, a mood regulator and a friendship contract with pause. Rituals are tools for nerves. Copy the ash ring with city moves, a screen curfew that keeps midnight from learning bad habits. A smoke bath for the mind, 10 slow breaths at thresholds like doors and inboxes. Bedtime is a braid, not a brick. Let first sleep and second sleep be ideas you can borrow when insomnia wants to work pro bono. If you wake at 3 a.m, tend the metaphorical embers water page stretch, then slide back under. Historians still argue whether segmented sleep was universal or just common under long winter nights, but your body already knows how to drift and return. Groups run on fairness more than charisma. Keep reverse dominance customs alive in your office or familiarly, praise in stereo teas, hubris back to pocket size, rotate spotlight and tools. Run a B court rather than a blame parade, rehearse the right way in public, instead of hunting culprits in private. The Minister of Morale is a real job. Promote someone who already does it, and pay them in Berry's coffee or at minimum visible thanks. When conflict spikes, remember Plan B, distance for a day. Fission is not failure, it's a pressure valve. Mark identity kindly. Wear bracelets, logos, tattoos, colours, but let them say we more than me. Art isn't a luxury, it's a user interface for meaning. Hang a picture near your desk that glows when light flickers. Put a handprint paper, paint digital wallpaper where your eye lands at tired o'clock, and let it whisper present connected working on it. Quirky tidbit chewed birch tar gum from 500-700 years ago, preserved a whole person's DNA and microbiome teeth, marks as signature spit as archive. Your marks will also outlive moods. Make them tender. Travel like a seasonal animal even if your season is traffic. Name the good sit stone on your root bench stoop cafe chair and let it be a way station. Cache kindness. Forward a spare charger at work, a note for later use soup in the freezer, labelled like a bead that says Fox Twilight. Your cloud storage can be an actual shelf with dry tinder for future evenings, candles, clean matches, a book that always lands. Technology is allowed, just teach it to serve the old calendar, not erase it. Practice medicine, small and daily warm. Clean, calm watch. Keep honey in the cabinet and patience in the drawer. Rest is legitimate treatment. Laughter has side effects you want. Tell your friends where the clinic is your text thread and make house calls like we used to carry coals, quiet steady with the respect due a sleeping animal. If somebody's startled bird is frantic, lend them your charm tooth pebble playlist breath pattern. The placebo is not a fraud, it is a bridge for the nervous system. Belief. Let it help with chores. Tie a mental cord at thresholds, keys, wallet, kindness, pat the door, rock. Thrice before big meetings. Deep inhale. Pause long, exhale, pour a drop into the figurative fire. When you cook gratitude out loud to whoever grew shipped, cooked or paid. Historians still argue whether agriculture was a rescue or a trap, whether grain villages lengthened lives or narrowed days. Either way, the hearth is still possible inside an apartment. Make one a table with 2 chairs and a light that forgives a rule that phones sleep elsewhere when soup is on. Trade slowly and for the long term. Start a tiny bank in a hollow log called your calendar. 15 minutes a week of deliberate favours, you don't invoice introductions, rides, recipes, the we'll check on your cat clause. It's HXRO by text message. When storms come, the interest arrives as footsteps on your porch. And play. Appoint an assistant to the regional bison in your group, the person who sticks dots on whiteboards with heroic flair. Name your hammerstone. Sir Thumps a lot, your kettlebell, your favourite pen, so maintenance feels like a relationship. Joke 1 institute insult the spreadsheet. Fridays to keep metrics humble. Joke 2 declare mosquito diplomacy whenever tempers buzz low, steady hums, only no swatting. Joke 3 if someone hoards the good blade, stage a drum song contest or karaoke until they remember sharing is lighter to carry. You are not far from the firelight. You never were. The camp's code rotate tools share first your neck the dark, kindly mark the wall. With care, tell the truth as a story that helps still works with USB-C. The echoes tomorrow are not metaphors. They are actions, a calmer morning, a kinder group, a tool that extends your hand. You belong to a species that survives by attention and generosity. Tonight you practiced both. Let the pace soften now, like coals settling into velvet. You breathe in through your nose, slow and quiet, as if not to wake a sleeping bird, and let the breath pour out warm, the way smoke threads a still room. The lamp by your shoulder is a small hearth. It glows without crackle, but your eyes accept the trade. Notice the easy weights, your shoulders heavier than a minute ago, your jaw unhooked, your tongue resting like a leaf on calm and clear water. You're here, and also there, half in the room, half by a fire that remembers your name. Somewhere a bracelet clacks once gentle and approving. Somewhere a friend shifts so your toes can trespass across their calf. The ash ring is drawn a simple boundary kind and firm. Inside it you keep what matters. Outside it the night minds its own business. Thoughts arrive, tip their hats and keep walking. If one insists, you give it a basket and ask it to carry a few sticks while you finish resting. The body likes instructions that feel like chores. It understands do this slowly better than don't think. So you do small work at a speed that makes sleep jealous. Stack 3 soft breaths smooth the hide of your pillow. Count the sparks that aren't there. Good. If a worry nips you, lend it your charm. Touch a cool spot on the sheet, trace it a circle, with a fingertip on your wrist, whisper. The old promises eat together. Share first, laugh. Gently check the dark, kindly sleep. The promises do not need you to be perfect. They only need you to remember. The room hums like a distant river. Your breath leans in the same direction downstream and unhurried around stones that stay stones. Somewhere a story finishes itself and curls like a fox. The last glow is yours to keep. Let it dim the way stars do not gone just presented a sweetness you meet with closed eyes. Good night, traveller, by many fires. The path will be where you left it in the morning.